Yeah, I have become a TikTok sensation, and it was so unanticipated, It's like, who would have thought that would make news? But yeah, we're having
You'll
fun.
have a second career.
I know. I know what I have. That's my fallback.
I enjoy watching it too.
Yeah.
Although I think your daughter's just going to move you right out of.
I know. She takes it real serious, her spotlight. Yeah. We're having fun.
Are you talking about me?
Yes, we are talking about you. You want to say hi?
Morning. Hi.
Wait,
You're doing a great job on TikTok.
say thank you.
Thank you.
You're
Look at
welcome.
all your fans.
Your fans. They don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know.
Well, they do. They know you.
I know.
Well, you're very famous now.
You are.
You're a celebrity.
We'll be asking for your autograph soon when we get back to regular session.
Yeah, she's in class right now, so
Class.
she's in class. So I don't know why she's out here. She's supposed to be in class.
I've done my work.
You are okay.
Hi, you guys. Hi, Madam President. Hi, Clerk. Hi.
Good morning, Kim. Good morning, Andrea.
Hey, a great hearing. Was it yesterday, the day before? I can't really track time. I'm having a hard time tracking time, but it was a great hearing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The day it was. Braden, Campbell.
Hey, Maureen, I see that accessories are still part of the ensemble for Wednesdays, I see.
I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah. I don't know, between you and Kim, I don't know. I got to keep up with you both because you
no,
all.
She left me in the dust. She's much better.
And then Flynn in his suits, I don't understand, Flynn is always suited up, always ready to go.
Do you have on sweatpants, Flynn? What do you have on from the waist down? That's the question.
No, I have my jeans on.
See?
Wait, Flynn, really? Do you? Do you really have jeans
If
on?
it gets warmer, people are gonna have shorts on. Uh-huh.
Jeans and
Did you hear
sneakers.
about that news guy that was naked, had I think boxers or something on, but a suit and tie up top? But he didn't know that that the camera could see the bottom half.
Oh,
The news and you can see. Be careful, Flynn.
I always get paranoid because when Annalisa's in class, I'm getting up, taking a shower, and I'm always mortified that I'm going to walk by her, with I'm like, oh my God, turn off everything. Just find a place. This Zoom reality is just, it's crazy. Or she'll fart or something.
Which one? Who was that? And he's Councilor Asabi.
That was Charlie.
Oh my God, he's got so big.
Make them come down and do their homework with me here.
Yeah.
One
Did
at
they
a
actually do it?
one at a time.
Oh, I have to let me get the baby. The council meeting is about to start.
Sit here, Charlie, right here.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Let me just do with that other. Did I grab it? The sheet that printed? There's nothing there. 846. Which one is it?
Good morning, Councilor.
Looking for Edwards, Flaherty, and O'Malley. Anyone see them on here? Edwards, Flaherty, and O'Malley.
I have a very limited screen. I can't really see.
Yeah, I can't get to the gallery view either.
Mhm.
But Edwards, Flaherty, O'Malley, thank you.
Thank him.
Hey, Flaherty. and
Hi, everyone. I'm here
Edwards.
too.
Hi, Woo. Edwards and Flaherty, are you guys here? Michael, Lydia?
Michael's avatar's here. I don't see Lydia though.
Oh, I didn't see Michael.
What up?
Hey, Mike.
What's going on, everyone? Hear me?
Yep.
Mhm. Yeah.
Check baby, 1, 2, good stuff.
Carrie, how are we doing on your end?
We're ready to go when you are.
Okay, well, we're still, I don't want to start before 12. We're still 2 minutes out. So,
Should we start with the musical number?
yeah, why don't we open up with a special treat? Get that started. And we'll still acknowledge it during the council meeting. So we want to bring back some of our special presentations, maybe start reintroducing clergy, certainly do our luncheons and special presentations there, which will take some pressure off of our central staff with all the hearings that we're having. And so today we're going to do a brief special presentation in today's meeting. And so we'll start with some of that music, Carrie. Great.
A beautiful composition of John Coltrane's entitled Peace on Earth. And that's what we'll use to close this afternoon's concert.
And Carrie, while this is playing, I think Edward.
I didn't.
Very nice. So we'll play some of that during our regular meeting, which I think we will get started. Lydia's having trouble with the link. Carrie, can we send that to Lydia's office again?
Yep, I'm on it.
Okay, wonderful. I don't know that she's joined. Let me see. When we have a visitor today. Thank you for that. Wonderful. Okay. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. If we're all ready, Carrie, are we good?
All set?
All righty then, we're going to get started. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll to ascertain the presence of a quorum?
Thank you, Madam President. Counselor Arroyo,
Present.
Counselor Baker,
Here.
Counselor Bach,
Present.
Counselor Braden,
Present.
Counselor Campbell,
Present.
Counselor Edwards,
Present.
Counselor Asabi George,
Present.
Counselor Flaherty,
Here.
Counselor Flynn,
Here.
Counselor Janey,
Present.
Counselor Mejia,
Here.
Counselor O'Malley,
Present.
and Counselor Wu.
Present.
Madam President, we have everyone in attendance.
Wonderful. I have been informed by the clerk that a quorum is present, and today our clerk will give the invocation, and then we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Blessed are the just, for they have the reward in indestructible integrity. Blessed are they who labor in the vineyards of the public realm, for they shall be remembered. Blessed are they who love their nation. Blessed are they who love their nation enough to praise its strengths and criticize its weaknesses, for they shall be made wise. Blessed are public officials who are responsive to the needs of these, the least of the people, for they shall be deputies of the community. Blessed are they who serve the public good, for their reward is in being used. Blessed are the powerful who acknowledge their power as both gift and responsibility, for they know the binding obligation of their bounty. Blessed are they who rebuke narrow self-interest to sustain the common weal, for they are the patriots of the nation's needs. Blessed are they who rise above partisan loyalties, for they shall be administrators of the public trust. And blessed are all people who seek justice in an imperfect world, for they shall be welcomed into our beloved community. Amen.
Amen. Let's recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for
which
which
it
it stands, one nation,
stands,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty.
liberty
and
and justice
for
for
all.
all.
Wonderful. Well, we have a special treat today. We'll have our first special presentation in a while, certainly our first one using Zoom. This Thursday, tomorrow's International Jazz Day, and so we will acknowledge that with a little jazz performance. And I wanted to invite Councilor Wu to say a few words about the band we're going to hear about.
Thank you, Madam President, for making this happen and for continuing the tradition. I figured I would, every year we've done this and we usually invite Pauline Bilski of Jazz Boston up to say a few words. So just given the new way of doing things, Pauline has sent me a little message, so I'm going to read it really quickly instead of saying anything. Thank you, President Jamie, for welcoming a Jazz Boston band into your virtual City Council chamber to celebrate International Jazz Day with all of you during this difficult time. You're continuing a tradition that made Boston history in 2014, when jazz was performed in the chamber for the first time ever. You may even be the only City Council anywhere in the world that celebrates International Jazz Day with live jazz. I took a quick look at the events registered on the International Jazz Day website and didn't see another one. These performances are our way of saying thank you for your strong support of Boston Jazz and Jazz Boston. We're especially grateful to the past and present members of the Arts, Culture, and Special Events Committee who have shared our belief in the power of jazz to help make Boston a better city for all its residents. We look forward to working with you to achieve that goal. You are a very cool city council, and you get cooler every day. 3 presidents in a row who are jazz fans is beyond our wildest dreams. I hope you'll enjoy the music and that it will brighten your day. I'll be listening from the virtual gallery. Thank you again, Pauline.
Nice. So we'll hear some more of that wonderful music. Carrie, if you could cue the music.
Next again to the wonderful musicians. Next again to the wonderful musicians we have here today. Thank you very much for coming out today.
Wow, that was wonderful. That was really amazing. Thank you so much for that. And if folks saw the scenery there, I'm sure you recognize that was the Great Hall in Faneuil Hall, where we had our inauguration, which was only a few months away, but seems like a lifetime ago. Anyway, that was really special. Thank you so much, Councilor Wu, for that. We will now move on to the first order of business, which is the approval of the minutes. And if there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last meeting will stand as approved. Seeing and hearing no objections, the minutes are so approved. Now we will move on to communications from His Honor the Mayor, and we'll begin with docket 0649. Madam Clerk, could you please read it?
Thank you. Docket 0649, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $1,120,853,359.10 in the form of a grant awarded by the United States Department of the Treasury to be administered by the City of Boston. This grant payment is made for the from the Coronavirus Relief Fund in the Treasury of the United States, established by Section 5001 of the CARES Act. Pursuant to the requirements of the CARES Act, the grant payment would fund the necessary expenditures incurred during the public health emergency with respect to coronavirus disease 2019, known as COVID-19, between March and December 2020, that were not otherwise accounted for in the City of Boston's most recent budget.
Thank you. Docket 0649 will be referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0650?
Docket 0650, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $500,000 in the form of a grant for personal protective equipment donation awarded by the Boston Resiliency Fund to be administered by the Auditing Department. The grant will fund personal protective gear and other supplies during the COVID-19 crisis.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Janey.
I would be seeking suspension and passage of this today. The goal of this, it's being funded by the Boston Resiliency Fund. The money is going to personal protective equipment. And the sooner we get this out the door, the sooner they continue to make those very necessary purchases.
Thank you, Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0650. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed,
Aye.
nay. The ayes have it, and docket 0650 has been passed. We'll move on to docket 0651. Madam Clerk, could you please read it?
Thank you. Docket 0651, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $50,000 in the form of a grant for the public awareness campaign awarded by the Boston Foundation to be administered by the Commission for Persons with Disabilities.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, this is a grant of $50,000 from the Boston Foundation for the public awareness campaign, which will highlight the important and impressive contributions by persons with disabilities to the workforce in Boston. This will be administered by the Commission for Persons with Disabilities, which does great work in our city by being strong advocates for persons with disabilities. I had the opportunity this morning to talk to Krista McCosh about this grant. This is relatively a small amount for a grant product, so I'd like to suspend and pass docket 0651 so that the commission can get this grant and continue their great work. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0651. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0651 has been passed. We'll move on to reports of public officers and others. Madam Clerk, could you please read dockets 0652 through 0660? We're going to read those together.
Thank you. Docket 0652, communication was received from the Boston Retirement Board regarding FY21 retiree cost of living adjustments known as COLA base vote. Docket 0653, communication was received from the Boston Retirement Board regarding FY20 retiree cost of living adjustment known as COLA vote. Docket number 0654, notice was received from the city clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the ordinances of 1979 regarding action taken by the mayor on papers acted upon by the city council at its April 1st, 2020 meeting. Docket number 0655, notice was received from the city clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the ordinances of 1979 regarding actions taken by the mayor on papers acted upon by the city council at its April 8th, 2020 meeting. Docket number 0656, notice was received from the city clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the ordinances of 1979 regarding action taken by the mayor on papers acted upon by the city council at its meeting of April 15th, 2020. Docket number 0657, communication was received from the city clerk of the filing by the Boston Redevelopment Authority of the agreement between the City of Boston and Old Colony Phase 3 B4 Limited Partnership pursuant to Chapter 121A, Section 6A of the Massachusetts General Law. Docket number 0658, communication was received from the city clerk of the filing by the Boston Redevelopment Authority of the agreement between the City of Boston and the Old Colony Phase 3 B9 Limited Partnership pursuant to Chapter 121A, Section 6A of the Massachusetts General Laws. Docket number 0659, communication was received from the city clerk of the filing by the Boston Redevelopment Authority of the agreement between the City of Boston and Old Colony Phase 3C Limited Partnership pursuant to Chapter 121A, Section 6A of the Massachusetts General Laws. And docket number 0660, communication was received from the city clerk of the filing by the Boston Redevelopment Authority of the agreement between the City of Boston and QMG Huntington Limited Partnership pursuant to Chapter 121A, Section 6A of the Massachusetts General Laws.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Dockets 0652 through 0660 will be placed on file. And now we will move on to reports of committees. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0628 through 0635? We'll read those together.
Thank you so much. Docket 0628, the Committee on Housing and Community Development, to which was referred to on April 15, 2020. Docket number 062, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $17,437,636 in the form of a grant, the federal FY20 Community Development Block Grant, known as CDBG, awarded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to be administered by the Department of Neighborhood Development. The grant would fund housing, economic development, fair housing, and human service programs. Submits a report recommending the order ought to pass. Docket number 0629, the Committee on Housing and Community Development, to which was referred on April 15, 2020, docket number 0629, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend $10,257,948 in the form of a grant from the CDBG 20-CARES awarded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to be administered by the Department of Neighborhood Development. The grant would fund programs to help alleviate housing and economic crisis conditions caused by COVID-19. Submits a report recommending the order ought to pass. Docket number 0630, the Committee on Housing and Community Development, to which was referred on April 15, 2020, docket number 0630, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $5,871,574 in the form of a grant for the federal, FY20 Home Investment Partnerships, awarded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to be administered by the Department of Neighborhood Development. The grant will fund housing services. Submits a report recommending the order ought to pass. Docket number 0631, the Committee on Housing and Community Development, to which was referred on April 15, 2020, docket number 0631. Message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $5,195,210 in the form of a grant for the FY20 Emergency Solutions Grant COVID-19 supplement, awarded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to be administered by the Department of Neighborhood Development. The grant will fund special activities to prevent and prepare for and respond to the coronavirus pandemic among individuals and families who are homeless or receiving homeless assistance. Submits a report recommending the order ought to pass. Docket number 0632, the Committee on Housing and Community Development, to which was referred to on April 15, 2020, docket number 0632. Message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $3,089,167 in the form of a grant for the federal FY20 Housing for Persons with AIDS, known as HOPWA, awarded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to be administered by the Department of Neighborhood Development. The grant would fund rental assistance and supportive services for persons with HIV/AIDS. Submits a report recommending the order ought to pass. Docket number 0634, the Committee on Housing and Community Development, to which was referred on April 15, 2020, docket number 0634. Message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $1,506,611 in the form of a grant, the federal FY20 Emergency Solutions Grant awarded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to be administered by the Department of Neighborhood Development. The grant would fund housing programs and services. Submits a report recommending the order ought to pass. And docket number 0635, the Committee on Housing and Community Development, to which was referred on April 15, 2020, docket number 0635. Message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $449,562 in the form of a grant for HOPWA 20 Cares, awarded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to be administered by the Department of Neighborhood Development. The grant would fund the Housing for Persons with AIDS programs to address the impact of COVID-19. Submits a report recommending the order ought to pass.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. The chair recognizes Councillor Edwards, who is the chair of the Committee on Housing and Community Development. Councillor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And I wanted to thank my colleagues who also attended last week's hearing, and in order to assure that we were getting the resources to the city as soon as possible. As you know, on April 15th, we were just presented that these grant opportunities of approximately $42 million, some of which are regular grants that we receive, and others are specifically for COVID and increased funding. And during the hearing, we split up the funding sources under the docket numbers 628, 630, 632, and 634, specifically to ask about the regular funding that the city gets. There was no controversy. There were very few questions. We wanted to make sure that that funding just got to the city. So it is my recommendation on those grants, the regular funding on 628, 630, and 632, and 634. Again, regular funding amounts for the city of Boston for our CDBG of 17 million, for the ESG funds for the home investment partnership for $5 million, the HOPWA grants for $3 million, and the $1.5 million for DND generally ought to pass. That is my recommendation for those numbers. And then if you'd like, I don't know if you want to have a vote for the regular funding.
Yes, so Councillor Edwards, if you could just speak to all of the dockets. We will take each docket separately when we vote, but if you want to just wrap up all of the dockets here, then we'll go by one for the dockets for the vote. All right?
Yes, Madam President. And again, it was for efficiency's sake to separate the two pools of money only. And then on the hearing, we had a conversation about the new funds of money, $10 million for CDBG. 631, that was docket 629. 0631 was an additional $5 million for emergency solutions grant. That $5 million was going to be offered to not the general public, but to already funded organizations that work in homelessness, and that they could bid on that money. And then the same for HOPWA, additional approximately $500,000 for HOPWA money. Again, that was going to be offered additional funds for already vetted, proven, true vendors of the city of Boston that deal with people who are housing folks with AIDS. The most of the conversation, Madam President, was around docket 629, the additional $10 million to which the city, again, I forgot to mention, Tim Davis, Rick Wilson, Trin Nguyen, I believe, were the participants on behalf of the city. I apologize for not mentioning that earlier. They mentioned that extra $10 million was going to go to the new fund and the new small business fund. Exactly the dollar we set up. This is 0629. But again, hearing no real controversy and concerns about the fact that we need the money and that we should actually release it to the city to distribute, I'm recommending that we also pass each one of those new fundings sources of 629, 631, and 635. I turn it over to my co-chair of the Housing Development Committee, Councillor Bach, if she has any additional thoughts, or the other councillors that were there. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Bach, did you want to make any comments? I'm just pulling up my gallery screen. You're good.
Yeah, just thank the chair so much for holding the hearing expeditiously and the whole administration for participating. And I think it's really important that we get these funds dispersed. And I say that knowing that the council is going to continue to be involved in the conversation about rental relief and small business support, that these funds will help. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I suggest we move on with votes. We're going to take each docket separately. And so here we go. We will start with the first docket, which was docket 0628. Counselor Edwards seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0628. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and docket 0628 has been passed. We will move on to docket 0629. Also, Counselor Edwards seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0629. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it, and docket 0629 has been passed. Docket 0630 is next. Counselor Edwards seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0630. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and docket 0630 has been passed. Counselor Edwards seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0631. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, and docket 0631 has been passed. Counselor Edwards seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0632. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and docket 0632 has been passed. Counselor Edwards seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0634. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0634 has been passed. Counselor Edwards seeks seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0635. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Docket 0635 has been passed. Did we get all of those dockets? Yes? Excellent. We will now move on to matters recently heard for possible action. And Madam Clerk, if you could read docket 0588 through 0605, we'll read those together. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0588 through 0590. Orders for the FY21 operating budget, including annual appropriations to department operations for the school department and for other post-employment benefits, known as OPEB. Docket 0591 through 0592, orders for capital fund transfer appropriations. Docket number 0593 through 0596, orders for the capital budget, including loan orders and lease purchase agreements. Madam President, do you also want me to read 0635? I believe that's going to be.
Yes, all the way through 0605.
All right, thank you. Docket 0605, message and order authorizing a limit for the Boston Centers for Youth and Families, BCYF, revolving fund for fiscal year 2021 to pay salaries and benefits of employees and to purchase supplies and equipment necessary to operate the City Hall childcare. This revolving fund shall be credited with any and all receipts for tuition paid by parents or guardians for children enrolled at the center. Receipts and resulting expenditures from this fund shall not exceed $750,000.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This batch of hearing order of items, as everyone knows, dockets are in Ways and Means for our continued budget consideration. I just want to thank councilors for joining working sessions this week in preparation for our hearings next week. The process is ongoing. Next week we'll be having hearings with BPS, with BCYF, with the Boston Public Library, Boston Transportation Department, and Public Works. So there's a lot of ground to cover. And I just really appreciate all the work that counselors and their staffs are doing, and the administration in answering our information requests. And so my recommendation as chair is that these matters remain in committee for further consideration.
Thank you, Councilor Bach. Docket 0588 through 0605 will remain in the Committee of Ways and Means. And we'll now move on to docket 0579. Madam Clerk, could you please read that?
Docket 0579, order for hearing to discuss resources available through Boston Veterans Services during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor. Councilor Flynn, so you just have to unmute yourself. Can you start again?
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, we held a hearing on docket 0579, a hearing to discuss resources available through Boston's Veterans Services during this pandemic. The hearing was sponsored by myself, and the panelists included Commissioner Rob Santiago from the City of Boston Veterans Services, Coleman Nee from the Disabled American Veterans, Carolyn Mason Hooley from the VA Boston Healthcare Women's Veterans Outreach Program, Anna Richardson from the Veterans Legal Services, Brian Reeves from the New England Center in-Home for Veterans, Brian Bishop, who's the Deputy Commissioner for the City of Boston Veterans, and Tom Lyons, a South Boston resident and longtime veterans advocate. I want to thank all of my colleagues in the Boston City Council for attending as well. The panelists gave updates from their organizations about what they are doing for our veteran community. The panelists spoke about their work in helping veterans and military families apply for Chapter 115 benefits, their outreach to veterans who may be in need of services, as well as different resources that are available from each veterans organizations. The City of Boston Veterans Services noted that their office is ready to assist in any veteran in need of help, in that they are also recruiting hundreds of volunteers to reach out to elderly veterans who may be in isolation due to this ongoing pandemic. The VA Boston healthcare system is adapting their outpatient and inpatient services to handle the needs of this pandemic, as well as stepping up their services for mental health outreach, including working with families on domestic violence related issues, family wellness programs such as yoga. Carolyn also noted that they still focus on our women veterans who are in need of specific medical assistance as well. The VA is working to ensure that veterans receive their benefits, as well as offering their own relief grants for veterans in need. Advocates also stress the importance of reaching out to veterans who may be in isolation to this pandemic. My colleagues stress the importance of outreach and access to information for our veterans that are available. They also stressed that we need to reach out to hard to reach populations like veterans of color, our LGBTQ veterans, and that everyone should have the same access and help, equal access and help. All veterans present confirmed their commitment to continue providing services to veterans and to provide equitable services for all. I believe that this was an informative hearing, and I will continue to work with my colleagues in veteran organizations and Mayor Walsh to make sure that our veterans and military families have access to the benefits and services that they earned. I ask that this matter remain in committee. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flynn. I attended that hearing. It was very informative. So thank you for that, and thank all of my colleagues for the work that you've been doing. Docket 0579 will remain in the Committee of Veteran and Military Affairs, and we will now move on to motions, orders, and resolutions. Madam Clerk, could you please?
There's docket 0285, Madam President.
Oh, yes, please. Could you please read docket 0285?
Thank you. Docket 0285, order for hearing regarding transportation benefits.
Okay, the chair recognizes Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. We had a wonderful hearing yesterday on the hearing order that Councilor Edwards and I had sponsored on the idea of requiring that businesses in Boston, employers would offer their employees access to a pre-tax benefit through the MBTA, the PERK program that the City of Boston already participates in. We heard from representatives from the administration and the Boston Transportation Department, as well as community advocates who have been involved with similar efforts around the country. There's many colleagues were in attendance, and we had some great discussion and great questions. There was some concern over what should be required and what should be encouraged. There was some follow-up due from the Boston Transportation Department on new programs that they are about to roll out that would help deliver transportation benefits and options to employers, particularly through our Main Streets program. And there was some follow-up also on re-envisioning what our transportation system should look like, which there will be a hearing order later today that touches upon a little bit. So I'll hand it over to the lead sponsor. I thought it was a very productive conversation, and have a clear sense that we could dive into next steps around a potential ordinance or working with the administration to understand what their programs will look like. Thank you very much.
Okay, does the sponsor want to speak on this?
A point of order, Madam President. I think the co-sponsor may be in the waiting room trying to get back into this Zoom call.
Thank you so much, Councillor O'Malley. Carrie, could we make sure that we've handled that? That's Councillor Edwards. I don't see her in here.
Madam President, it would be great if this matter could remain in committee.
I appreciate that. And I just want to make sure that we can hear from the sponsor if she's available. Carrie, could you please advise?
Yeah, she's returning to the meeting as we speak.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I see that her audio is connecting. Councilor Edwards, are you with us? If you unmute yourself, Councilor Edwards, we just heard from Councilor Wu reporting out on the hearing and wanted to give you the opportunity as a sponsor to offer some remarks. If you don't have any, that's perfectly fine.
Thank you for this opportunity. I will happily take it. The hearing was, I thought, very efficient and was great opportunity to hear from Director Vaneet Gupta and also City Planner for BTD, Alana Makal, to specifically discuss already what the city is doing, where it was announced suddenly or for the first time that the city already has a program that is subsidizing public transportation for or at least requiring the developers in Article 80 projects to subsidize public transportation. Was a great opportunity to dive into that and to learn more about that. The funding that they're now receiving from TNC operators, they're going to be using also to fund subsidize Main Street District businesses and help their workers come to commute. So that's a great opportunity. But what we did learn most importantly is that this kind of benefit is something that should be offered. The city offers it to its employees. We think that people commuting into Boston, especially our essential workers or people who don't have a choice but to take public transportation, should at least have this choice, and that is to be able to get a pre-tax benefit that helps them pay for their public transportation. The best thing about this is it costs employers absolutely nothing. So the next steps that we have, and I wanted to thank the advocates, T4MA and COAST, who especially wonderful ideas and thoughts and ordinances from around the country. I want to thank my colleagues who also attended, but the next step really is to look at how we can implement this here in the city of Boston, whether an ordinance makes sense, whether it's legal. I recommended, and I'm going to be pursuing, looking at our contract and leveraging our ability to work with employers right now as they contract with the city, that we at least ask that in our contracts, that they offer this benefit to their employees, again, costing them nothing. Therefore, it's not a unfunded mandate. It's really asking them to do their part in helping us with climate change and helping people get to work. So thank you very much, Madam President, for this opportunity. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but I'm back.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Docket 0285 will remain in the Committee of Planning, Development, and Transportation. And now we will move on to motions, orders, and resolutions. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0661?
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0661, Councilors Flynn and Wu offer the following resolution supporting House Bill 908, condemning all forms of anti-Asian sentiment as related to COVID-19.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I filed this with Council Wu as we hear more and more about the uptick of racist and discriminatory incidents targeting our Asian American residents and neighbors. The House Resolution 908 in the US Congress condemns all forms of anti-Asian sentiment as related to COVID-19. It is a congressional resolution introduced by Representative Grace Meng from New York. It has received support from other organizations and policymakers, such as the Massachusetts State House Asian Caucus and the Black and Latino Caucus. House Resolution 908 calls on officials to denounce all forms of anti-Asian sentiment and prioritize the health and safety of all Americans, no matter their race and ethnicity. It also calls on federal law enforcement to investigate and document all credible reports of anti-Asian hate crimes, as well as to urge the United States leadership to recommit itself in prioritizing policies that combat discrimination and promote language access and inclusivity. In Boston and elsewhere, businesses have declined sharply. And I hear reports, especially in Chinatown and other restaurants, that people are not visiting these restaurants at the start of the pandemic. We're also hearing people calling COVID-19 the Chinese virus, and the Wuhan virus also makes matters worse and makes our Asian American neighbors into scapegoats. I know that we must speak up against any act that discriminates against our communities. That's why I joined with Council Wu in filing this resolution in support of House Resolution 908. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flynn. The chair recognizes Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you so much to the lead sponsor for his leadership and lifting up our communities always. This is an incredibly important resolution at the federal level that Representative Meng has introduced, and we see its impact every day. In Boston, we've seen both the economic impact as well as the emotional impact on our residents, and in many other cities across the country, I've heard from other colleagues who represent various Chinatowns or other communities with large API populations that the fear and anxiety and incidents of hate crimes are incredibly alarming. And most of all, it is frustrating and painful that it is being subtly encouraged by the President of the United States, and even the presidential election, the presidential campaign overall has been leaning into a conflation of foreign policy that is sort of anti-China with stereotypes that reinforce anti-API discrimination. So I'm very grateful that my colleagues on the City Council and throughout and at every level representing the City of Boston have always been steadfast in standing up against racism of any kind. And this will continue to be an issue for our communities, both during the pandemic, but even after, as we think about the economic impacts and a long-term recovery. So thank you so much, and would ask for everyone's support today.
Thank you so much, Councilor Wu. Happy to acknowledge other speakers who want to make very, very brief remarks. I see Councilor Braden has her hand up, and I encourage those who want to make very brief remarks to raise their blue hand. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
Madam President, please add my name to this resolution. I'd also like to remind folks that May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and it seems really appropriate time to hold up the concerns of our Asian residents in our neighborhoods and across our country at this time. So please add my name to the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Braden. The chair recognizes Councilor Campbell. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to applaud Councilor Flynn and Councilor Wu for the continued leadership on this, and recognizing that I have a large Vietnamese population in Dorchester shared with Councilor Baker. This is a major issue. So thank you guys for continuing to stand up for this population, but also against racism. Please add my name, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to add their name to this resolution? Madam Clerk, I think you have Counselor Braden and Counselor Campbell. If you could also add Counselor Flaherty, Counselor Arroyo, Counselor O'Malley, Counselor Edwards, Counselor Bach, Counselor Sabi George, Counselor Mejia, and the chair. Wonderful. Counselors Flynn and Wu seek suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 0661. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and docket 0661 has been adopted. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0662?
Thank you. Docket 0662, Councilors Wu and Braden offer the following order for hearing regarding implementing changes for safe streets during and after COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm really excited to partner with Councilor Braden and grateful for her leadership on this as we think about what our transportation system should look like, both immediately now for safety as well as through the recovery. We've talked a lot about transportation on the council and the many issues in our interconnected system, but many of these challenges will get worse as COVID goes on. Even when we're at the point where we're reopening businesses, people will be afraid to use public transit. And how do we make sure that we're providing enough service levels that people can sit further apart on buses, that we continue the practices now of no fare collection so that folks can enter through the back doors and protect drivers from being exposed. There have been a just unbelievable number of MBTA employees who have been confirmed with COVID and are still working in conditions that risk exposure every day. So this is an issue about thinking of the space that we have, the modes of travel that we have, how can we protect physical distancing now, as well as put in place the changes so that as people are thinking about how to get back to work in weeks to come, we're not immediately going back to more cars everywhere only because people are afraid of getting on public transit and feel that it will be too crowded. Certainly we understand many people, especially essential workers, need to have vehicles. This is not about taking, banning any particular mode of travel. It's just about recognizing how interconnected this is and that our collective safety depends on rethinking our transportation system. Last week, just a week ago today, another cyclist was struck and killed in Boston. And we know that many of these crashes are entirely preventable if we start to put in place infrastructure changes that will create separation and make streets safe for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd also like to thank Councillor Wu for her leadership on this important issue. We are here in Boston, we're still in the midst of the surge. We have a stay-at-home order until May 18th. And now is the time that we need to work proactively to ensure that we have a safe and deliberate approach to a return to work. We live in a very dense urban neighborhoods. We'll see increased pedestrian traffic, and we'll see people will be wanting to get back on public transit. So it's really important that we consult with all folks who are further ahead in this process. This is a global pandemic. Cities across the world are further along in this process. They're figuring out things that work, and they're also identifying things that don't work. We have a lot to learn from their experience, their successes and their failures. So I really welcome this hearing to explore how we, as we move out of a stay-at-home situation to get people back into work situations, that we have a deliberative process to identify best practice and to ensure public confidence in the safety of our mass transit systems, but also to ensure safe streets. And I welcome the opportunity to have this discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I see folks looking to speak and happy to recognize those with their blue hand who want to make brief comments. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I just really want to commend the makers and say I'm excited about this order, and I agree we have to really rethink things. I think this is not a short-term thing, as we all know. We really have to think about what we're going to do in the new normal. And as somebody who represents a really dense district with a lot of people who are, walking has become the only way to, get any recreation. And I think that, and we've got really narrow sidewalks in some parts of my district. And I just think that we have to be strategic about this, because I know I've heard concerns about, hey, if we open one street, if we make it blocked to traffic, will we create an attraction and therefore too many crowds? And that's exactly part of why you have to think about whole networks. You have to think about, how do we get the folks with vehicles, essential workers, where they need to go, but also just create more space for the many people who live in the heart of our city and are not able to go as far afield as they might have otherwise to safely get around. So I just really want to stress, I think there's a chance here, and I appreciate the makers referencing it in the order. There's a chance to think about some of the things that we've been looking to do anyways on a Vision Zero front, and to really accelerate that work right now. And we've just seen so much speeding lately in the heart of the city. So many near misses in terms of pedestrian and bicycle accidents. And it's just really important to me that we seize this moment and use it to make safety for all people in our city better, not worse. So really just want to thank the makers, and looking forward to that conversation and the work ahead.
And Councillor Bach, you wanted to add your name.
Of course, yes. Thank you, Madam President.
Anyone else looking to add their name or make a very brief remark? Okay, we're going to add names. Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councillor Flynn, Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Edwards, Councillor O'Malley, Councillor Mejia. You already have Councillor Bach, Councillor Sabi George, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Arroyo, and please also add the chair. Docket 0662 will be referred to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0663?
Docket 0663, Councilors Flaherty and Flynn offer the following order for hearing to discuss the impact of delivery commission fees on restaurants during COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. If there's no objection, I'd like to suspend Rule 12 and add our colleague, Councilor O'Malley, as an original co-sponsor.
Seeing and hearing no objections, Councilor O'Malley is added as a third co-sponsor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam President. As many of us have read in the news, delivery commission fees are an increasingly contentious point of discussion during this pandemic, with cities across the Commonwealth and our country discussing the impact of these fees and the implementation of a temporary cap in light of the ongoing pandemic. So as we've all seen throughout the city, in our local communities, regulating delivery fees has been a topic prior to COVID-19, particularly among the restaurant industry counterparts. But now with our restaurant industry more reliant on delivery services as their only source of revenue, quite frankly, they're relying on third-party delivery services even more so. So this discussion is urgently needed. I understand that third-party delivery companies have financial needs themselves that need to be met. They also need to pay their workers, and their workers obviously need to pay for fuel maintenance and repair. So at a time when many of our restaurants are struggling and fearing that they won't reopen, exorbitant commission fees on each and every order, quite frankly, feels a little exploitive. So our hope is that maybe the parties can get in the room and sort of figure this out. Since Councilor Flynn and Councilor O'Malley and I had filed this, we have heard from Uber, and they have agreed as part of their national effort and their partnership with Jane Doe to include Boston in offering free rides, particularly for victims and survivors of domestic violence, which obviously is a great gesture in their way of helping us in our COVID-19 response. And we're looking forward to hearing what others are doing as well. So as a body, I think we have an obligation to look at ways we can support our local businesses. And I'm looking forward to an expedited hearing on the matter, along with my colleagues, Councilor Flynn and O'Malley, and the rest of us as a team. But hopefully, again, this is something that I would argue is a no-brainer. And I'm thinking that folks in the delivery world can get on the phone with the folks in the restaurant world and come to terms with something that just makes sense, where there's a shared responsibility and we're giving a little bit to get a little bit, and demonstrate a willingness to get through COVID-19, get back on our feet, and that's our hope here. So my hope is that maybe we won't even need to have a hearing, but it really is going to depend on how everyone, I guess, gets along in the sandbox. So that said, I appreciate that and look forward to hearing more on it and hearing from my colleagues. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. The chair recognizes Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor. Councilor Flynn, we just have to make sure you're not muted. Yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to Councilor Flaherty and Councilor O'Malley for partnering with me. COVID-19 pandemic is having a huge impact on the restaurant industry. Many restaurants had to close or switch to pickup or delivery only. And to do delivery, many restaurants have to utilize third-party delivery companies. Third-party delivery companies charge commission fees from 10% to 30%, even 40%, which can be a big burden on restaurants during non-pandemic times. But now that the restaurants are even much more reliant on delivery for sales, these commission fee makes it even harder for restaurants that are already struggling. There are currently only a few third-party delivery companies that dominate the market, making it difficult for restaurants to negotiate a different commission fee structure. I have heard from many restaurants in my district, owners who are concerned about the commission fees that they have had to pay, including John Shaw, owner of L. Jeffries, which is in my district. This is a concern, especially now that their business is mostly from the delivery. They are already operating on a very thin margin profit to begin with, and having to pay this 30 or 40% in commission makes it hard for them to survive when business is already down. We want to call for this hearing to assess the impact of third-party deliveries for restaurants and talk about what we can do to be helpful to restaurants. Our restaurants employ a lot of people, their dishwashers, their bartenders, the waitresses, their cooks. They put money on the table for their families. We need to work with these restaurants, and hopefully these third-party delivery companies have a change of heart and have some compassion during this critical time. It's about giving someone a hand up, not exploiting the situation when things are tough. Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for my colleagues for sponsoring this as well.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor O'Malley. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And obviously want to thank my dear colleagues, the at-large council from South Boston, as well as the district council from South Boston. I think independently, we three were all working on this issue when we realized it's better and more efficient to join forces. It's been well covered by the two previous speakers. I just wanted to offer a little bit more perspective and why this is important. Most of our local restaurants that specialize in delivery and takeout, I'm talking about our pizza parlors, our Chinese takeaway, have staff that perform the delivery. So they're paid an hourly wage, hopefully at least $15 an hour, and rely on tips. And those are members of the staff who do their delivery. More traditional brass and fern restaurants that rely on sit-down business, typically, not always, but more often than not, wouldn't have staff that would do delivery. They would subcontract out with one of the big four delivery firms, DoorDash, Postmates, Uber Eats, and others. There are four firms that represent about 99% of all third-party delivery services. And they charge a fee to be able to do that. Now, if you're a restaurant that specializes in sit-down meals, you'll happily pay a higher fee to then not have to incur the cost of having a delivery on site. The issue is that restaurants that typically would have, 3 to 5% of their business as delivery are now looking at 80 to 85% of their business as delivery. So that very high delivery fee, while it may make sense during so-called normal times when we're not in pandemic as a business model, it is absolutely crippling many of these restaurants now. Now, the Restaurant Association of Massachusetts has speculated that 30, 40, perhaps even 50% or close to it of restaurants could have difficulty reopening as we begin our recovery phase. So the fact that many of these businesses that are just struggling on the margins right now are incurring these huge costs is going to make it so much more difficult for them to sustain their business model in a post-COVID-19 world. So this is a very, very important issue. It's obviously very, very wonky, but I think it's one thing that we can do as a city to support local businesses and support the consumers as well. We've seen countless other cities across the United States cap fees at 10 or 15%. San Francisco, New York, Chicago, Newton and Cambridge have been doing it as well, or close to finalizing what their percentage would be. And if we're looking at a 20 to 30% average cost with many of these delivery services, to at least cut that in half, to absolutely at a minimum cut that in half, we will be able to both offer support for these small businesses that would presumably will help them stay in business, as and often the case being passed on to the consumers as well. So I'm delighted to join my colleagues. I echo what the first speaker said, that hopefully a hearing will not even be necessary. We are seeing one of the larger delivery services, Postmates, has already agreed to cut their cost by 50%. I'm not sure what their percentage is now. It's proprietary information to many of these companies, but just by capping it at a lesser amount, again, 10 to 15% is what other cities are doing. I think we should at least be in line with that. We'll have an opportunity to really support these small businesses and support their customers as well. It's a no-brainer. It's something that is long overdue, and will also allow the folks, the independent contractors, typically who are the delivery drivers for these services, will be able to continue to make a good living. And obviously we want to make sure that the companies provide the safety protocol and oversight for the considerable delivery that they're doing. Thank you very much, Madam President. Thank you again to the at-large council from South Boston, District Council from South Boston, for their great partnership and leadership on this issue.
Thank you so much. Happy to recognize folks who want to speak. I see a blue hand from Councilor Braden. I will recognize her so she can make a brief comment. Others who want to speak, please raise your blue hand. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I commend the makers for this very important resolution. I feel that I represent Alston Brighton. We have a huge number of small independent restaurants and takeout establishments. It is the lifeblood of our local main streets, and it's a really important issue to address. And I hope that we can remediate this situation as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to add your name, Councilor Braden?
Yes, please.
All righty. Others who would like to add their name, please, a show of hands, your physical hand. I see Councilor Mejia, please add her. I see Councilor Wu, did you want to speak? Or just add your name? I will come.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. Yes, go.
All the hands. Okay, so Councilor Mejia, Councilor Bach, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Baker, Councilor Arroyo, let's see, Councilor Edwards. I think I have all the hands. Councilor Campbell, please also add the chair. And I think you have Councilor Wu, and I'm gonna let her make a very brief remark before we assign this. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to thank the sponsors so much for this, so important to what's happening now. And just ask if you could also, as you're having conversations with the major delivery companies, raise the issue of safety for their employees and the customers that they'll be delivering the food to. I'd heard from a few restaurant owners that they were very concerned as they were handing food off to delivery folks who might have had a cough or a cold or something like that. So just understanding what the safety procedures are as we're seeing delivery expand this throughout the city as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Docket 0663 will be referred to the Committee on Small Business and Workforce Development. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0664?
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0664, Councilors Wu and Flaherty offer the following order for hearing regarding transitioning city services online due to COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm grateful to Councilor Flaherty for partnering on this push. We have had many conversations over many years about what City Hall should, comparisons to the Apple Store, and how we could provide the easiest, most accessible way for constituents to access city services as we are in this time of rethinking how we do everything. I think it's important to identify what has been accomplished so far, both for the immediate transition to make physical distancing possible for city workers, to keep them safe, to keep, as well as for constituents who might need access to services. We know with an appointment only system, you're only going to be able to serve so many people. So what are we accomplishing? What have we accomplished now? And then what pieces of it do we want to make sure carry on into the future, especially as the recovery picks up and people are all of a sudden going to have a rush of wanting building permits or other types of permits that typically come with some sort of in-person interaction, even if it's a check on the status. Why can't we do all of that with virtual services, right? If you need to appeal a parking ticket, you don't have to come in person, but all of that is automatically with an online option. Of course, we need to make sure that people who don't have access to technology always have an in-person way and support to navigate that. But because so many people are now used to it and getting comfortable with it, let's make sure that that carries forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam President. Obviously, thank the previous speaker, colleague, Councilor Wu, for working on this. I echo a lot of her comments. I know that I can say that the city and this administration have done an excellent job of working quickly under extraordinary circumstances to protect city employees and members of the public that may have to come to City Hall for essential services during this time. We have moved a huge amount of our workforce to doing remote work and taking steps to reduce interactions with members of the public. You, Madam President, also worked quickly to transition the council and our offices to remote work as well. And kudos to you and also to central staff. I know that you and I spoke about central staff and the hours and the pressure that's on them. So shout out to central staff at this time for doing great work on all of our behalfs as we continue to work remotely. That said, there are still departments in city services that may require people to come in person for service. And we need to look at that. And we need to look as to whether or not in 2020 that makes sense, particularly now as we're going through our COVID-19 response. So this may place an undue burden on people who need to come into service for services, whether that looks like a drive-in or circling to find a space or getting on a bus or a train to come downtown or simply avoiding coming downtown at all and delaying their access to city services. So this hearing is simply an opportunity to discuss which departments are already providing services online and which departments could continue to transition some services online, both during and after the pandemic. So I guess it's a great opportunity for us to, to have a little quality control conversation and see where we could make a difference. It's, I thought of it the other day in terms of block parties. I assume that, block parties are non-starters for the foreseeable future, but when folks have a block party, they have to come in themselves personally and sign up and pick up their signs. Those are the things. Can we send them something and have them pick up at curbside, or have them sent up and pick up curbside at a copy store? I mean, it runs the gamut of things that we can and probably should be doing moving forward. And this is a great opportunity. So look forward to partnering with Councilor Wu and others as we examine, how we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flaherty. Happy to call on speakers who wish to comment. I see Councilor Mejia with her blue hand raised. If there are others, please raise your blue hand and please be very brief. I will call on Councilor Mejia. I see you, Councilor Campbell. The blue hand feature is right under managed participants at the bottom of your screen. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia, and then I will come to you next, Councilor Campbell. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I've been taking heed to your warning of very brief, so I've spoken very little during this council meeting. But I do find this as an important issue to want to lend my voice to. So wanted to just commend the makers of this hearing and just wanted to raise up two things. As we start thinking about this digital world, just want to be really super mindful of our elders who are not so tech savvy, and making sure that as we start moving in this space that we're also thinking about the resources to ensure that they're able to learn the technology or have other ways to connect. And then the other piece is making sure that we are thinking about language access and making sure that all of these things are going to be digitally translated in ways that people can understand it. And then I also want to be really super mindful that not everybody knows how to read or write. in their own native language or in English for that matter. And so as we start thinking about this digital new way of being, I just want to be cognizant of that and figuring out how we can ensure that those folks don't get left out of this conversation. But really excited and super, super, super on board for it. So thank you both to my colleagues for bringing it in. Thank you.
Thank you for those important points. The chair recognizes Councillor Campbell. Councillor Campbell, would you like to comment?
I just wanted to add my name.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you.
If there are no other speakers, we can go ahead and add names. Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councillor Braden, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Arroyo, Councillor Bach, Councillor O'Malley, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Sabi George. Please also add the chair. And I think you have Councillor Mejia and Campbell. Thank you. Docket 0664 will be referred to the Committee on City and Neighborhood Services. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0665?
Docket 0665. Councilors Wu and Mejia offer the following order for hearing regarding the allocation of City of Boston COVID-19 relief funds.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you. Madam President, could I request to suspend Rule 12 and add Councillor Arroyo as an original co-sponsor?
Seeing and hearing no objection, Councilor Arroyo has been added as a third co-sponsor.
Thank you. This hearing order really follows up directly from our hearing that we had last week on planning for an equitable recovery from COVID-19. It was a really community grounded conversation representing a number of different sectors and communities within Boston, talking about the ways that the planning for recovery has not necessarily included every voice or been most targeted to the area where need is greatest. One of the big questions that did come up was how the city's own funds, the three municipal resiliency funds that have been set up, the Boston Resiliency Fund, the Rental Assistance Fund, and the Small Business Relief Fund, which we exercise complete control over and which the City Council has oversight over as the sort of fiscal authorities for the City of Boston. We have questions on how those funds have been allocated so far, what the processes have been, and what the processes will be moving forward for future distributions. The administration was not available to attend, so this is a hearing order to follow up and make sure that we can really zero in on the places for collaboration and that we can either through data requests or potentially a future hearing have that direct back and forth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I have always said that we need to lead on the belief that all means all. So when we all heard that the city of Boston was preparing to disburse funding for commercial and rental relief, I was thrilled because it seemed like an opportunity for a lot of people experiencing financial hardship to get a leg up in our city. During the application process, though, I noticed a few things. When I tried to fill out the application myself, because I'm an exponential learner, I noticed there were a few questions that were a little bit confusing, and everything was first rolled out in English, and then later the information was rolled out in different languages, which made it really difficult for a lot of people to access the information in a timely fashion. So I think that we have missed out on opportunities to serve folks who were in dire need. And so what we have found out is that during this process that the funding was also switched in the beginning. It was first come, first serve, which added some anxiety to folks who had a hard time even understanding the application process. And then at some point it turned into a lottery system. So there was just a lot of discrepancies in terms of how this was rolled out that I think really questions whether or not we have done our due diligence in making sure that we're serving all. Truthfully, we don't know fully the impact of how these choices impacted the community, and that's why this hearing is so important. And I'm also excited to get to work on this issue with my colleagues, Councilor Wu and Arroyo, and I look forward to a productive solution-oriented conversation with members of the public and members of the administration. I think that this is really an opportunity for us to recognize that when it comes to serving all, we can't do that unless we're really intentional about making sure that those who are in positions of power are participating in this dialogue. And I'm hoping that the administration will participate in this hearing.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Janney. We did hold a hearing where we invited several business folks to the table. My office has been in contact with a number of small businesses who have expressed frustration with both the process for the federal relief and the state relief, but also the municipal relief. There were concerns about being asked for more information, and then when returning or reaching back out to the city, being told essentially nothing, receiving no response to the request for more information when requesting what kind of information was required or what they needed to update their applications, receiving a cold shoulder. I think part of the issue here too is that there's quite a bit of changing in the way that the system went out. It started out as first come, first serve, turned into a lottery system. And when you have a lottery system, you're unable to ensure that the funds are spread equitably throughout the city. And so there's a number of different questions we have as to, where the resources went, who the resources benefited, and what ways we can make those programs better, because there's a good chance in all likelihood that we will have to do another aid program down the line, and the lessons we can learn from this one will inform those decisions in the future. And so this is an important initiative to ensure that we get the information on what went right here and also what went wrong, and ways in which we can really improve our systems of releasing aid and our systems of governance here.
Thank you, Councilor Arroyo. I see a blue hand. I will call on speakers. If I see your blue hand raised, please keep your comments brief. I see Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I want to echo the continued advocacy to make sure that as we are dealing with an emergency, we still learn from lessons as we're giving out the funding. We gave out $3 million in more or less a week in terms of the rental relief program. And it's important for us to learn these lessons now, because it is expected that we will have a second wave of COVID and dealing with that and making sure that we are using every single resource to the maximum to help all people in the city of Boston. I just wanted to lift up the fact that on May 4th, I am having a working session actually on the rental relief program that has been planned to specifically ask a lot of these questions and to analyze the lessons that we learned from the first rollout. I believe there'll be a second rollout, and there should be an additional $5 million coming from the Neighborhood Housing Trust. And then also we just approved funding, possibly another $5 million going just to the rental relief program. So before that money comes in, we have a lot of questions. So just want to let my colleagues know that and I thank you all the colleagues who are now sponsors of this hearing order also attended the first rent relief conversation along with several folks, including the chair. So I just wanted to echo that and let folks know that that is also coming up this Monday.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Would anyone else like to make brief remarks before adding names? Okay, seeing no blue hands. Madam Clerk, if folks want to sign on by a show of hands, would you please add Councilor Braden, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Bach, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Sabi George, and please also add the chair. Docket 0665 will be referred to the Committee on Post-Audit, and we'll now move on to the dreaded docket 0666.
We should skip that number.
Madam Chair, could you please read the docket?
Docket 0666. Councilors Braden and Flynn offer the following order for hearing regarding the occupational safety hazards and presumption of COVID-19 exposure for essential frontline workers.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor. Let's just make sure you're unmuted. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you also to Councillor Flynn for co-sponsoring this hearing with me. As you all know, we're in the midst of a worldwide pandemic, the likes of which we haven't seen in 100 years. And while many of us have the privilege of continuing our work from the safety of our homes, there are tens of thousands of our frontline workers who have to turn up for work every day. The term occupational presumption in the context of COVID-19 means that employees on the front lines of this pandemic are presumed to have contracted an occupational disease that is subject to workers' compensation if they become ill with COVID-19. But sadly, not every employer is accepting this. It is of great concern that we are hearing reports of some healthcare administrators trying to make the case that these workers acquired the virus in the community and not at work. And we must remember that this is happening in the context of shortages of personal protective equipment and in the midst of a stay-at-home order that restricts public interaction outside of the workplace and outside of the hospital. And to contend that these infections are acquired in the community is really disingenuous and an insult to our healthcare workers and our other frontline workers. This situation cannot stand. We are hugely indebted to our frontline workers in the midst of this public health emergency. And the very least that we can do is to honor their sacrifice by ensuring that those who fall sick with COVID-19 in the course of their work have access to workers' compensation. I trust that this hearing will highlight the injustice of this situation and encourage employers to remedy this situation going forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Councillor Braden. The chair recognizes Councillor Flynn. Councillor Flynn, you have the floor. Councillor Flynn, could you please unmute yourself? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. And I want to say thank you to Councillor Braden for including me on this important hearing order to further protect our nurses and essential frontline workers. I also want to say thank you to Councillor Braden for her incredible work that she's done for many, many years in helping so many people. Our healthcare workers, first responders, grocery employees, other essential frontline workers are providing critical services to all of us during this pandemic. And many of them now have tested positive because of their jobs. However, the Massachusetts Nurses Association has reported that a number of hospitals argue that healthcare workers who tested positive for COVID-19 got the virus in the community, as Councillor Braden mentioned, rather than at work. Even though there are many reports that healthcare facilities still have shortages of PPE and that COVID patients are not separated correctly. We should have occupational presumption for all our frontline workers, which is the presumption that when a worker gets infected by COVID-19, that they got the virus because of their job. We need to protect the safety and the security of our frontline workers, including advocating for occupational presumption. This body has a long time history of working closely with our frontline workers, especially our nurses who provide tremendous care every day during this pandemic in fighting for so many patients. Again, I want to say thank you to Councillor Braden. I look forward to this discussion. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councillor Flynn. I will recognize speakers. I see Councillor Edwards. Councillor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I want to commend the makers. This is an incredible conversation and it's coming up. We're having a conversation, our virtual coffee hour, and working during COVID on the weekend because of, I'm sure all of us have received, I don't know how many emails about unemployment, about worker safety, about not wanting to go work, about being pregnant and being forced to go to work, and all of these different things. And so it's so important that the City Council lead on this. So I want to commend Councillor Braden and Councillor Flynn for your leadership. To add to that conversation, I do think there should be a conversation about workers' compensation. Why is that important? Because if people are getting injured on the job and being forced out, or even dying from COVID, which does happen, and there are many seniors and many people who are working into their 80s and 70s and 80s and are essential workers. The thing about workers' comp is that it applies to everyone, regardless of their status, and it's about benefits and it's about who was injured on the job. So I would encourage OSHA, but also a conversation about workers' compensation and how that works with COVID. added into the temporary workers' right to know, which was an organization or organizing effort for years. We have passed that. Workers have the right to know certain things about where they're going to go, how much they're going to get paid, whether they're working with hazardous materials, and also I think whether they are going to get a mask and gloves and how that is going to now work in the world of COVID. And finally, sick leave laws, as you know, we passed that, paid, unpaid, there are more than 10, less than 11, and all those different rights that attach to that. But it's really important to advocate, to push, and to truly amplify the rights that we have and how they need to be adjusted to the new world that we're living in. But thank you so much for starting this conversation. I'm excited to be there, and absolutely please add my name.
Thank you so much. Are there other speakers? No, good. We'll do a show of physical hands for folks who want to sign on. Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Flaherty. I believe you've added Councilor Edwards, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Bach, Councilor Royo, Councilor Wu, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Mejia, and Councilor Campbell, did you want to speak as well? I see you.
Yeah, I'll be quick, Madam President.
The chair recognizes Councilor Campbell, if you could please add her name as well.
Thank you, Madam President. I too want to thank the makers, Councilor Flynn and Councilor Braden. This is a critical issue. The calls we are getting with respect to folks in my district who are indeed those essential workers and wage workers who cannot work from home, it is just enormous. And they are absolutely at risk. They're extremely concerned about the limited supply of masks, sanitizer, gloves available to them as they do their jobs. And then the second piece is whether or not they're going to have to fight for their families in order to get the benefits they so deserve. And so I want to echo Councilor Edwards' comments on workers' comp. OSHA's also sent out some resources. I also want to applaud everyone on the council with respect to our own city employees, particularly those in the public safety departments, around us supporting them in terms of their exposure being presumed, which is critically important. So thank you both for your leadership on what is an extremely important issue, not only now in the midst of COVID-19, but also after this, to ensure that these workers get the benefits they deserve, and that their families as well, God forbid something happens to them, also get what they deserve. So thank you both very much. Thank you, Madam President. Please add my name.
Thank you, Councilor Campbell. Docket 0666 will be referred to the Committee on Small Business and Workforce Development. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0667?
Docket 0667, Councilor Edwards offered the following order for hearing regarding the City of Boston purchasing liquor licenses.
The chair recognizes Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm very excited to introduce this conversation as part of the recovery tool, and the toolkit that we will certainly need in terms of getting out of the COVID economy. Honestly, I'm proud to represent probably the largest concentration of restaurants. And the fact is that many of them do not expect to open up again. Many restaurants around the city, we've heard as high as 40% may not come back. And for a lot of them, the only asset that they have is a liquor license. And so what we are thinking about and hoping is that together the city could come up with some funds to purchase those liquor licenses, giving some funds back to that business and then allowing them to open up again. But we own the license at that point. And it's a matter of leasing back to that restaurant. And if the restaurant will not open again, and maybe the debts were just paid for, then now the city has another license that it can look at and control. And we're not necessarily looking to the state always in terms of who to distribute to and how to distribute. It's a way in which we can hopefully save a lot of restaurants. A lot of restaurants can hopefully turn to their employees or turn to their landlords and say, I'm going to be able to come back, and I'll be able to come back with a license, though I may not be able to own it. And I have to say, honestly, there's been a lot of positive, excited thoughts and suggestions for this hearing order. Yes, there are a lot of liquor licenses that are mortgage backed, but I think we can be having a conversation with the banks about what relief they could be providing them, like they did with regular tenants and also business tenants. But there's a lot of mortgages that are owned by the landlords, and we should be talking to those landlords in the same way that they're providing relief to residential tenants, that maybe they should be also providing relief or rent relief to those business tenants.
The fact is, we want a vibrant restaurant industry. We already are asking for additional liquor licenses from the state that is pending in a home rule. We'll have the working session on that, but this is about saving the restaurant industry in Boston and making sure that also the city of Boston can at least own some of the restaurant industry liquor licenses in that process and make sure that people can come back swinging proudly, honestly, making sure small businesses, mom and pops can continue to grow and thrive in the city of Boston. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilor Edwards. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the lead sponsor. Please add my name. It's an interesting concept and something that I believe the city should strongly consider, basically buying or owning a significant share of the licenses. I know that bar and restaurant owners have raised this issue in the past, particularly during some of our working sessions. But I think that what they're experiencing now due to the pandemic is really brought the issue to the forefront. And that if what we're hearing is true, and with close to 20, maybe 25, possibly 30% of the businesses not reopen, that will obviously flood the market. Into the lead sponsor's point that it is a commodity. It's something unlike any other license. It's borrowed on, it's pledged, and it can be seized to satisfy a debt or a lien. So banks absolutely need a seat at the table because if folks have a license and it's been pledged, or the equity in that license is being used as either collateral or being held by a bank, a lending institution, and the business bottoms out, then the bank will obviously eat that license. And then it'll start off probably an auction industry. But in any event, very interesting proposal. Look forward to the hearing to learn more about it. But I think it really underscores, particularly the hearing that we had a little over a week ago that Councilor Edwards had shared, whereby folks were concerned by flooding the market with 184 new 7-day CBCs. Councilor Baker actually had a great suggestion in the short term, recognizing, and this is really about balancing our food deserts in areas that need an infusion of investment, and we need some more parity and equity with respect to liquor licenses, and obviously not creating, I guess, the Uber effect that occurred with our taxi industry, where you can actually you can't even give a medallion away anymore. So we don't want that to happen with existing businesses. So it's like we're trying to strike a balance. And this is a really interesting proposal at the appropriate time. So look forward to an expedited hearing and look forward to working with the chair on this. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I just want to commend the maker. I think I've heard similar ideas in my district. And I think that one of the things we really need to be thinking about through this crisis is that when we use public resources to try to handle the ways in which we've been hardest hit, thinking about, is there an opportunity to reset a policy area that's been broken, and kind of use that infusion of public resources wisely in a way that's going to help put us on a better long-term trajectory is going to be really important. And I think this is just a great microcosm of that, of the potential for us to both help a bunch of business owners and think about solving kind of long-standing issues we've had in this space. So just want to commend Councilor Edwards and look forward to the hearing. Thanks. And please add my name.
Thank you for that. Anyone else looking to add their name, a show of physical hands, please. Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Braden, Councilor Flynn, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Wu, Councilor Sabi George. Please add the chair. I think you already have Councilor Flaherty. Yes. Docket 0667 will be referred to the Committee on City and Neighborhood Services. I think at this point, I will leave the dais and call upon the Vice Chair, since I am next. And Vice Chair, if you want to just call upon the clerk to read the next two dockets.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam Clerk, would you please read docket number 0668?
And 0669.
And 0669.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Docket number 0668, Councilor Janey offered the following order for hearing to explore creating an equity empowerment zone in the cannabis industry. And docket number 0669, Councillor Janey offered the following order for hearing, reviewing the implementation of the ordinance establishing the equitable regulations on the cannabis industry in the city of Boston.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair recognizes the sponsor of both dockets 0668 and 0669. She will speak on them both, and then we will take comments from the councilors on both, and they will be referred to different committees. The chair now recognizes the council president. Councilor Janey, you have the floor on dockets 0668 and 0669.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I will speak to these two dockets together. As folks know, last November, the Boston City Council passed an ordinance establishing equitable regulation of the cannabis industry in the city of Boston to ensure that communities disproportionately impacted by the prohibition of cannabis are able to benefit from this multi-billion-dollar industry. And while there have been significant developments to Boston's cannabis industry, such as the recent establishment of the Boston Cannabis Board and $1 million investment in the Cannabis Equity Fund, and the opening of Boston's first recreational shop, which was also the first dispensary to be owned by people of color in the entire Commonwealth, as well as the first economic empowerment applicant to make it through. But many of these small business owners still face obstacles when trying to enter into the cannabis industry. Even more so now, since all non-essential businesses were forced to close due to the governor's state of emergency order in response to COVID-19, we see small business owners really struggling here. In weeks since, the city's small businesses and entrepreneurs, including those in the cannabis industry, have all been facing financial hardships. We've heard about it in this meeting, just talking about restaurants and the challenges that they have, all due to the pandemic. According to the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission, recreational shops that were forced to close because of the pandemic, like Pure Oasis, which opened up in Boston, they're losing nearly $2 million in daily sales. And that's based on sales between December 30th of last year and March 8th of this year. And that loss of revenue not only impacts those businesses, but obviously the host municipalities. And since marijuana is still illegal on the federal level, many of the dispensaries are not going to be eligible for paycheck protection programs or other loans designed to aid businesses through this recovery efforts. This could potentially lead to businesses closing. We just talked about that with restaurants. And many businesses, before they can even open their doors, when we're talking about this particular industry, will go out of business before they can even get their businesses up and running. So as we plan for an equitable recovery, I want to introduce these two hearing orders that will put more focus on creating equitable opportunities and access for wealth creation in communities of color that were disproportionately impacted by the prohibition of cannabis and the war on drugs. So one hearing order is to explore creating an empowerment zone. So we know that the current buffer zones that we have in place in Boston, many of the applicants who are trying to establish businesses, particularly those who are from disproportionately impacted communities, have expressed many challenges with the current system. And they continue to be disadvantaged and locked out as compared to some of the larger companies that are coming in to these high revenue generating areas like downtown, like the Seaport, North End, Fenway, Copley, and many of the other applicants are being locked out. We know that from the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism, that domestic and international visitors who come to Massachusetts each year bring about close to $23 billion. And if we create a new equity empowerment zone in areas that generate a lot of dollars and have a lot of foot traffic, we will be giving the applicants who we're trying to help a foot in the door so that they're not locked out. of these areas. The other hearing order is to review the implementation of the ordinance that we passed last fall. As I mentioned earlier, we've seen $1 million investment into the equity fund. Mayor Walsh created the Boston Cannabis Board, but many applicants are still just waiting to hear something back from the city. Right now, as we've been discussing at this meeting and all of our hearings and in previous meetings, we know how important recovery efforts are, and that this particular industry and making sure that we have a process in Boston that is working for applicants and residents alike will be very important. This is an important lever in reviving Boston's economy post-pandemic and in closing our already existing wealth gap. So we know after the pandemic, there's no going back to normal or the way things were. And even if we were able to go back to normal, a normal for many of the folks that were trying to help with the original ordinance was riddled with inequities. And so as we think about the economy and our recovery efforts, we must prioritize equity and lifting up those who have been left behind. And we've got to continue to prioritize equity and clarity and transparency and accountability. Again, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Our residents, as well as our entrepreneurs, deserve equity, clarity, transparency, and accountability. And this is an important way to revive our economy and to create jobs. So I hope my colleagues will stand in support of these hearing orders and will sign on and participate in the hearings that I hope will be robust. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll now open up the floor to discussion on docket 0668 and 0669. I'd ask my colleagues if you'd like to speak on either or both of these issues to please click the participant tab and then raise their blue hand. Afterward, you may speak on both topics at once. Afterwards, we will individually add names for those who don't wish to speak. The chair now recognizes the district councilor from East Boston, Charlestown on the North End. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I want to commend the maker for her advocacy and continued focus in this industry. The fact is, there is no equitable recovery without cannabis. And there is no way we are going to have a true comeback from this city if we allow for this industry to die. And that's what we're doing right now as the city of Boston. We are allowing this industry to die. The fact is, we passed historic legislation last year, giving the mayor the opportunity to appoint a board to have that board start meeting and to have them actually start issuing HCAs. As a result of that, the Office of, I don't know, whatever, the Emerging Industries decided to no longer issue any HCAs. It was just immediate stop, a pause in the pipeline, and then nothing. And that's what happened literally up until the pandemic. There really seems to be no, there really is no excuse not to be meeting, honestly. The CCC is meeting. Licensing board, as I understood from the city of Boston, has started to meet last week. So why isn't the cannabis board meeting? Why aren't they talking? Why aren't they moving these HCAs? There are plenty of people in the pipeline, we discussed this, who have been waiting for, I don't know how long, who were in line before. And I think that when they do meet, we should have all of those folks who have been waiting patiently for the HCA should be heard in the first two meetings and to move them along. Just to remind my district city councilor colleagues, that would also require, I believe under the new ordinance, a letter of non-opposition support or opposition. But to, you know, if there's one thing you can do in your part, check out who from your district is in line and at least get them those letters. Make sure that we are all moving to get this done and before the board as soon as possible, because it is about saving the industry at this point in the city of Boston. HCAs, if they're granted, even during the pandemic, and yes, they may not be able to open, but you know what they will do? They will be keeping hope alive for a lot of these small businesses. They can turn around to their investors saying, I have the HCA. I have something to prove that I am going to be able to open. They can not only turn to their current investors, but possibly get new investors. They can turn around and possibly get some loans or some other outside angel investors. They can demonstrate that they are on the way despite the pandemic, and if we don't do that, we can basically say they're going to be dying, and we are acknowledging that as the city of Boston. I find that to be unacceptable. I do thank the mayor for the equity fund, but to fund what? at this point, unless people are getting those HCAs and moving along, then that fund would be for show, and this board will be for, I don't know, Facebook. But either way, it's not doing anything. So I'm encouraging the administration to start meeting immediately. If the licensing board can be meeting, the CCC can be meeting, then Boston needs to do its job. I absolutely am signing on to both of these hearing orders. I commend the maker, and I'm excited to get this conversation moving.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Chair now recognizes the at-large councilor from Rosendale. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Ooh, I'm not sure there's much to add after Councilor Edwards. I sign on and reiterate. Want to thank the council president for her leadership on this for several years now, and appreciate that this is both a look back to whether we have been doing our job since the passage of the ordinance, and how we are starting to straighten out some of the awful situations that these entrepreneurs have been put through, and then looking forward and planning for what the city could be doing to really use this emerging industry as a way to kickstart our recovery. We are facing incredibly dire economic situations across the board, and in those moments, we need to figure out which industries are the ones that can just start to get the economy going again. This is one that was right at the cusp of doing that before the pandemic started, and we should be taking steps now to make sure that everything is in place so that as soon as the public health lines up with it, the economic piece will be able to be up and running as well. Thank you very much. Oh, please add my name to both.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Chair now recognizes the district council from Mattapan, Dorchester, Roslindale, and Jamaica Plain. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And I too just wanted to take a quick moment to thank Councilor Janey for her continued leadership on this issue, and not only ask for my name to be added, but also to flag the collective advocacy of some other electeds, right, with respect to Pure Oasis, which is technically in D4, but is on the border of Councilor Janey and I's district. And Kobe and them have worked incredibly hard. It has been an overwhelming, daunting, hard process to set this business up. Every barrier and hurdle you can imagine to open a small business, they had to deal with. And to get through all of that, and then to go back to the community and keep their promise of hiring locally, doing it responsibly. They had a plan in place to operate in the midst of COVID-19, and then to be told, actually to be told very little, that they would be shut down with no discussion whatsoever, while liquor stores were allowed to remain open, is frankly just unacceptable. And so I kudos to you for bringing this issue up, and just wanted to flag that and the hard work of these folks who went to a long community process. I also know there was some collective advocacy with Alexis, and I appreciate her advocacy at the state. She made a lot of calls with respect to Pure Oasis and sent letters, which I appreciate too. And just wanted to echo the sentiments of Councilor Janey, Councilor Edwards as well, and Councilor Wu. So thank you guys, and please add my name.
Thank you, Councilor Campbell. Would you like to add your name to both dockets 668 and 669?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Chair now recognizes the at-large council from Dorchester. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So I just wanted to, and now I'm all paranoid with President Janey's keep it brief, but I'll just say I'm signing on to both. And I think when we talk about equity and we talk about making sure that folks are having the tools and the resources they need to see their businesses thrive, I think that we have an opportunity and a responsibility to do right by all. And so I'm all in and commend President Janey for her leadership on this issue. So thank you, and just add my name.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Add your name to both dockets.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And remember, as Polonius said, brevity is the soul of wit, and appreciate the brevity from all colleagues today. The chair now recognizes the at-large councilor from South Boston, Councilor Flaherty. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just through the chair to the maker, I just want to just draw her attention. Let me see, it's 1, 2, 3. The fourth whereas, I just want to get see if you can explain to me how that would work with the half-mile buffer that we have to protect our communities.
So
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Madam President, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you, sorry. So I don't have it in front of me, Councilor Flaherty, but the point of, I believe you have the one that's talking about establishing the equity empowerment zone, yes? So the idea really is just to have a discussion about what it would look like to create an empowerment zone, an equity empowerment zone that gives a little more support and leverage for equity applicants. Right now, the ordinance that we passed last fall says that the city of Boston, half of the licenses will go to equity applicants and the other half won't. Now, if all of those licenses, though, for the equity applicants are in areas of our city that are on the outskirts, whereas the large companies can come into downtown Seaport, there's definitely, we're building in more inequity is the point here. This is a hearing order, so we'll have discussion about what we could have in an empowerment zone, what that looks like. So one idea might be that we relax some of the buffer zone requirements for equity applicants, perhaps. Perhaps we would look at this equity empowerment zone and say half of the licenses within that empowerment zone, those will also be for equity applicants, so that we're ensuring that it's not just half the licenses in Boston, but we recognize in Boston, there are certain areas in our city that have a lot of foot traffic, that generate a lot of visits from tourists or from people who work in different industries, and that those areas of our city generate a lot of business. And so is there an opportunity for equity applicants there? So this is a hearing order for us to discuss anything and everything that colleagues have in terms of ideas around what this could look like. So it's a beginning of a conversation. I hope that helps, Councilor Flaherty. Thank you.
Yes, no, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the previous speaker. I just have concerns because we put a lot of work into that as a body, and we heard loud and clear from the residents across the city that they wanted to make sure that there were protections and that no one neighborhood would be overrun, and have it returned to having it be just sort of a free for all in one particular community versus having it fairly and equitably sort of dispensed across the city. So a lot of thought went into that and a lot of effort went into that. So just want to make sure that, and the good news is obviously if we're on the front end of this and we really don't have a lot of shops yet, maybe we identify where the empowerment zone should go first, and then we work within that buffer, that half-mile buffer from the onset. I just want to make sure that it's not trampling that great work that we put into it. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Would any other colleagues wish to speak on either docket 0668 or 0669 or both? Hearing no further discussion, Madam Clerk, with docket 0668, could you please add the names Councilor Edwards, Councilor Wu, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Mejia? Would any other colleagues, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Bach, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Braden, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Arroyo, please add the chair's name. And docket 0668 will be referred to the Council's Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Madam Clerk, on docket 0669, please add the names Councilor Edwards, Councilor Wu, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Braden, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Bach. Please add the chair's name. Councilor Anissa Saibi George. Docket 0669 will be referred to the Council's Committee on Government Operations. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilor O'Malley. Madam Clerk, we will continue. Could you please read docket 0670?
Docket 0670, Councilor Flaherty offer the following order for a hearing to discuss COVID-19 protocols in nursing homes, assisted living facilities, and senior living facilities in the city of Boston.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Like many of my colleagues, my phone has been ringing nonstop with concerns from neighbors and family members whose loved ones are living at either a nursing home, assisted living facility, or a senior living facility. And as folks know, people put their loved ones into those settings so they can continue to access quality care, be in environments where they can socialize and enjoy a quality of life. And obviously, COVID-19 is now making people rethink those decisions. Just a few weeks ago, I know that many families were experiencing concerns and with the lack of communication coming from these facilities with respect to the status of COVID-19 in their facilities. For example, how many members of a facility had tested positive, how many employees had tested positive, and other important information about exposure protocols, hygiene protocols, PPEs, et cetera. We've all been handling those phone calls and reaching out, working on our daily calls with the mayor and his team to make sure that we're getting adequate resources to these facilities. Well, data across the state shows that many of these facilities are not have not been reporting the rates of infection and sadly the deaths, and among both of those populations with respect to their patients and their employees. So many of these facilities are private facilities, therefore the city has no jurisdiction over them. However, our residents deserve more and they need more up-to-date, more accurate information about their loved ones in these facilities. So my hope is that this hearing can simply serve as another trusted source of information and outlet for people to receive information about best practices that are taking place at nursing homes, assisted living facilities, and senior living facilities. And I know we learned on the call today, and Council Flynn and I have the Marion Manor in our neighborhood that staggering numbers of confirmed cases, as well as from the patients and the employees. And I know that they had struggled initially to be communicating accurate information to families and loved ones. We were able to, and we've been engaged in this now for several weeks, working with Congressman Lynch and Senator Collins and Representative Beal, along with the mayor and the governor's office, as well as the National Guard, to try to make a difference down there. And again, in those receiving phone calls from family and loved ones, and making sure that we're doing the best we can. And that's playing itself out all across the city. So I'm sure a lot of our district colleagues have stories with respect to things happening, as well as our at-large colleagues. So this is an opportunity to sort of see what the standards are and encourage all these facilities. And this isn't about getting in the middle of HIPAA or the CDC. This is just a daily call or a daily call-in number or a daily posting as to what's going on in that particular facility, so people can get the information about their loved one and or about the conditions and the situation that is occurring where their loved one is at. So thank you, and I look forward to an expedited hearing on this, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flaherty. The chair recognizes Councilor O'Malley. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Rise to, I wish to speak to commend the maker on this, ask that my name be added. You know, I've been a broken record on this, but it bears repeating as it relates to our nursing homes, our skilled care facilities. They've constituted a clear majority, about 52 or 53% of all deaths that we've seen in relation to COVID-19. And while I do appreciate a lot of the efforts at the state level, there's been one sort of glaring omission that I am very grateful. I drafted a letter to the governor several weeks ago. All members of this body co-signed it and have been very supportive. Mayor's office has been supportive. Chief Martinez has been supportive. But we often have in these campus-like settings for our nursing homes and skilled care facilities and assisted living facilities, we have independent living units as well. And if you are a senior who's living in an independent living unit, you don't have the same opportunity to testing that you would if you are in a skilled care unit or even an assisted living unit, where literally you could be sharing a wall, you're sharing a hallway, you're sharing the common areas. We know how easily this virus is transmitted and is spread. So I've heard from a number of residents and family members of residents of these types of facilities who are terrified and frustrated. And by God, I share their frustration. I recognize the fact that a lot of this is sort of being driven by the lack of testing and opportunity for testing. But I think that it is high time, if we're going to get serious about confirming the spread and testing, which really is the most important thing we should be focused on right now to address the severity and the depth of COVID-19, we need to, at an absolute minimum, be making sure that seniors who we know are the most susceptible to death or catastrophic outcomes from COVID-19 have access to these tests. And then I think the next step after that should be seniors who live alone. You know, I don't need to tell all of you, we all know it. 21 pages of obituaries that was in the Boston Sunday Globe. It is beyond heartbreaking. And I know that this body is committed to doing everything we can to protect the most vulnerable to recognize the fact that this disease, that this virus is just so impactful at all levels. This is an opportunity to particularly focus on our seniors and our older Bostonians. So I commend the maker, look forward to quick action, and hopefully that we can have a better system in place with our state partners to allow for testing in these facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to add my name to this. I feel I agree with all this other speakers. This is a really important issue. In Alston Brighton, we have a huge number of senior living situations, and there are great examples of best practice happening. One of the area of concern is that we have a large population of elders living in privately owned residential units that are with a mixed population of market rate tenants. And it's been a big challenge to try and ensure that adequate sanitation is happening and that there is no commingling of those populations. And I think just focusing on the needs of our elderly population at this time, they're so vulnerable and so susceptible to this this virus that anything we can do to preserve their safety is worth the effort. So please add my name to this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Braden. The chair recognizes Councilor Asabi George. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the makers on this hearing order. Through some of my mask work that I've been doing at the Stitch House, it has been amazing to me the calls that we've gotten from facilities looking for this PPE. And so I think that added to this should be a real thoughtful conversation and a detailed conversation around what equipment these facilities have, what equipment they need and should have, because I shouldn't be making cloth masks for these residents unless it's just to brighten their day. They need access to increased quantity, volumes of masks and other protective gear, and it shouldn't be coming from me. It should be the real deal. So I'm looking forward to this this conversation, and please add my name. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to join colleagues in expressing gratitude to the sponsor for making sure that the council is officially pursuing this and offering all potential resources to get answers and to plan out next steps. I think we are focused not just on the health and well-being of our seniors, but kind of the systemic underlying conditions that led to these facilities being such vulnerable locations. Much of that is a labor issue as well, and that staff in these facilities have been underpaid, have had to take on multiple part-time jobs, have not had benefits, and now are struggling themselves with kids home from school. And there are many strands to this, but I'm very grateful that the council is taking this up, and we'll look to stay involved and eager to make sure that we are pushing to make sure so that this never happens again.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to also share my deep and sincere gratitude to the makers and add my name. And I just also want to just uplift that aside from the assisted living, I think that once we start transitioning back to the reality is that we're also looking at the adult daycares providers that house a lot of seniors during the day, making sure that they are also well equipped with the resources and tools that they need to protect our elders. So I would just encourage that we extend into that space as well. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Is anyone interested in adding their name who hasn't already spoken? Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Flynn, and please add the Councilor Edwards, Councilor Campbell, and please add the chair. And Councilor Bach, please. Councilor Bach. I think I got everyone. Wonderful. Docket 0670 will be referred to the Committee on Public Health. And we'll now move on to docket 0671. Madam Clerk.
Docket 0671, Councilor Flaherty offered the following order for hearing regarding grief counseling as part of the city's COVID-19 response.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. It goes without saying that this pandemic has uprooted every aspect of our lives, including the traditional end of life family moments, the opportunity to say thank you and I love you and goodbye to your loved one, ceremonies and in the grieving processes. So I know our local funeral homes and cemeteries report that they are the busiest that they've ever been. Personally, I recently lost a loved one and can speak to how different and how difficult the grieving process was, particularly for my aunt and my cousins who didn't have a lot of those opportunities that others had, sort of with the traditional wake and funeral mass and Christian burial. So I can only imagine how absolutely heartbreaking it is for our neighbors, and residents across the city who've lost numerous loved ones. I think at this morning's call we're somewhere in excess of 350 folks. So
now me and my mom have a message for you. Thank you, Niña.
Please continue.
and so that's
And
okay. So,
your device is on mute if you were not speaking, please. Thank you. Sorry, Councilor Flaherty, please continue.
and so I know that we have an employee assistance program. They've done tremendous work over the years, a multitude of different situations that have come up. So, and they join an extensive list of resources that are available for our city workers. Particularly many of our area hospitals have well-known grief counseling programs, but neither place have any specific resources identified right now for COVID-19 related grieving processes. So I have an order for a hearing here to see, again, while everyone is working quickly to meet the needs of our residents, to make sure that we're testing enough people, to make sure that we're encouraging folks to participate in the antibody study, making sure that we're focusing on trying to reopen at the appropriate time. All of our local businesses, I want to make sure that, we're taking some time and putting some attention to the employees and for those that have encountered grief and need or in need of assistance as they work through the grieving process with losing a loved one to COVID-19. So and/or may have not lost someone due to COVID-19. They may have lost them for another reason, but still were not able to be by their bedside at their last moments, and/or have had to delay, memorial services and things like that. So hoping to have an expedited hearing and bring in the appropriate parties to discuss what we can do as a city as it pertains to the individuals that our city has lost to COVID and beyond, and look forward to my colleagues' opinions and thoughts on it as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Is anyone else looking to speak? Show of blue hands, please. The chair recognizes Councilor Asabi George. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the maker. I want to just thank Councilor Flaherty for this hearing order and reiterate that mental health supports are critical for everyone. We recently have heard the story of a New York City doctor who died by suicide this week, in part because of the emotional toll of the suffering and the death that she saw, as well as the impact of Corona on herself. We need to take the grief and mental health concerns seriously, and as they are certainly a part of this crisis, part of the collective trauma that we're experiencing as a city. With that in mind, I'd like to just elevate the work of the Boston Area Trauma Recovery Network. They are a volunteer network formed after the Boston Marathon bombing. They provide free online group mental health support for anyone who needs it. My office will, at the end of this hearing, share the information on how to get in touch with them, because I think it's a really critical network of services. I hope that everyone is respecting that their mental health is just as important as their physical health, and we know that the two are very directly tied to one another, and that we remain kind to ourselves and remind each other to be kind to one another. Earlier this year, I had refiled an order calling for the formation of a mental health commission. I think when we think about the work that we do as a city, certainly the impact of the work that we do as a city, the impact it has on the region, talking about mental health in a very thoughtful way is really important, but thinking about how we can create systems of care and systems of care that really do support all of our residents, whether it's due to this pandemic, the impacts of this pandemic on our residents, whether it's our seniors who are living more and more in isolation, whether it's our children, our kids who are, experiencing their own disengagement from social circles and school and peers and teachers, whether it's families and moms who are dealing with some of the pressures that this new way of living has created. But aside from the pandemic, those pressures exist for all of our families and all of our residents. So this work continues to be so critically important. And I applaud the maker for bringing this to us today and really magnifying or amplifying the magnitude of this challenge that we face everywhere. So thank you, Councilor Flaherty, and please add my name.
Thank you, Councilor Sabi George. The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really welcome this conversation. I think the impacts of this crisis are going to have ripple effects going forward for many, many years. As Councillor Flaherty mentioned, all of our usual rituals around death and dying are sort of thrown out the window. We don't have all those rituals that help us process and have some closure with the death of a loved one are gone. And I feel that anything we can do to improve our response in terms of mental health supports is very, very valuable at this time. Thank you so much. Please add my name.
Thank you, Councilor Braden. The chair recognizes Councilor Campbell. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to applaud the maker, Councilor Flaherty, in bringing up this specific issue under the umbrella of mental health. It is a major concern, of course, that we are hearing in our office, and it's really hard and difficult. I do think it connects to the resolution that this council passed on focusing on mental health, particularly funding set aside to expand the outreach capacity of local organizations to do this. Also expand the possibility of organizations in the community hiring more providers, for example, in this time, and how we ramp up post-COVID, and running some kind of public awareness campaign. I know on the call this morning, the mayor mentioned a few things in the mental health space. I do think this is a time for us to go back to that resolution, which we haven't really had significant conversation on, and include this piece of the conversation, as well as the commission that Councilor Sabi George mentioned, the recent hearing that Councilor Braden had as well, on domestic violence, child abuse, and what is happening in some of our households on the mental health piece. I think it's all connected in that people are grieving in different ways. And so look forward to that conversation. If the administration is not inclined to participate in a hearing, unfortunately, as we're seeing, some of these conversations can be happening at other times and places to still move the ball on these issues that are so critical. And I think there's absolute stories and incredible context that every counselor can provide based on what they're seeing on the ground. And then, of course, offer up our ideas and suggestions. So I really hope that this is an area that we can have more robust partnership with the administration on. Please add my name, Madam President, and thank you again to the maker.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor O'Malley. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I obviously wish to commend the maker on this important, and I won't say it's overlooked issue in our response, because I think others have, and we've certainly been talking about it, but I particularly am grateful that the at-large counsel from South Boston has raised it in the hearing order today. One of the things that is so especially cruel about COVID-19 is that when a loved one is lost, there's really not an opportunity to grieve for them in the way that we're used to. We've all lost loved ones. We know how difficult it is. We know how that hug or handshake or visit from a friend or another family member to support us is so crucial to the healing process. That can't exist right now in a way that we're known. And every Friday neighbors on my street, just like streets across Boston, at 7 o'clock cheer our first responders, our frontline workers. And we have no shortage of nurses or cops or firefighters or EMTs or grocery store workers on my street. And my direct next door neighbor actually runs and operates a funeral home. And to hear some of the stories of what he's had to do, just how they've had to have, a wake with no more than 10 people at a time, to talk about working with the cemeteries. Talked to one of our colleagues who work, not our council colleagues, our city of Boston colleagues who works at Mount Hope. They're seeing, 6 to 7 burials a day, when that number would seldom go above 10 per month. I mean, this is just such a staggering issue that we're facing, to have a specific opportunity to talk about mental health supports, grieving supports, anything we can do to talk about how the mental health aspect is so crucial to our recovery is obviously something we should all be focused on. So thank you, Councilor Flaherty, for this. Please add my name, and look forward to seeing how we can support one another in all of our neighborhoods.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Yes, I also wanted to thank Councilor Flaherty for presenting this. Just one thing that I wanted to just bring to light is, in addition, before we go to the grieving phase, there are a lot of folks who are losing their loved ones in the hospital, and they're unable to connect with them. And so I'm just curious in terms of this, if there's an opportunity to also talk about how do we create an opportunity for folks to be able to, whether it be digitally, to be able to connect with their loved ones before they pass away. I think that grieving process, I believe there's an opportunity to kind of get to people before they start grieving, because it's been a bit abrupt. And then the other piece that I'd like to offer is that when we think about that, whatever we put together now, it's not just due to COVID-19, but that whatever infrastructure we create will live beyond COVID-19, period.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Councilor Flaherty, did you want to circle back? Your blue hand is up.
That happened.
You're good, yes?
Yeah, I'm good. Yes, thank you.
Wonderful.
Appreciate
At this point, Madam Clerk, if we could add names, I'm looking for a show of hands here. I see Councilor Flynn, Councilor Edwards, and Councilor Bach, Councilor Arroyo. I believe you have Councilor Nisa Savi-George and Councilor Wu. These screens are moving. You guys got to stop with the coming in and out of your pictures. All right, I'm going to go again. Councilor Braden, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Bach, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Wu, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Campbell, and I think I saw Councilor Edwards earlier, and Councilor Savi-George. Please also add the chair to that. Thank you so much. Docket 0671 will be referred to the Committee on Public Health, and now we will move on to docket 0672. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0672, Councilor Arroyo offered the following order for hearing to discuss Boston Public Schools preparation and/or planning in the event of extended COVID-19 social distancing measures and related school closures into school year 2020-2021.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Janey. I'd like to add Councilor Savi-George as a original co-sponsor.
Seeing and hearing no objections, Councilor Savi-George is added.
And so this is an order for a hearing to discuss Boston Public Schools preparation or planning as we head into the next school year. I think it's clear to most that this is unprecedented. We've never been in a situation where our children have had to miss this much school, or where teachers have had to essentially try to create lesson plans to give over technology. And so as we look at all the different factors within BPS and our children, our children's needs, whether that be IEP, whether that be advanced placements, whether or not they're in or out of school for the start of next school year, the plans that we have for the summer, this is just a chance to have BPS come to the table to address our questions and our constituents' concerns regarding the needs of their children and what they plan and intend to do moving forward to try and cope with and really make the most of the situation that we're in right now. And so with that, I hand it back to Councilor Janey, but I look forward to holding, President Janey, I look forward to holding a hearing to discuss all of these different issues and make sure that nobody falls through the cracks in these difficult times.
Thank you, Councilor Arroyo. The chair recognizes Councilor Sabi George. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And most of you would see in your folder today or online that I filed a hearing order a few dockets down that is similar in nature. So we, together, Councilor Arroyo and I are going to combine these two hearings, using his as the main one, adding me as a co-sponsor, and really have a thoughtful and thorough conversation with the Boston Public Schools. As you all know, I'm a BPS parent. My 4 boys are in the 8th and 9th grade. And we have seen varying degrees of success in their ability to get their work done. And now with the extension of school being closed and continuing with school from home, it creates some, interesting challenges. I'm trying to be kind. It creates some frustrations, but we understand that this is a different time, a special time, and there is going to be some chaos. There's going to be some uncertainty, and the least amount of uncertainty that we can have in what we're doing as a school district going forward. So for the rest of this school year, preparing for some sort of summer school and some sort of summer enrichment, preparing for September. And what does that look like? How are we supporting our kids? How are we supporting our families? How are we supporting our teaching staff? There are so many unknowns, and I think Councilor Arroyo and I appreciate the challenges that this has created for everybody that's involved, from the superintendent, who has been working tirelessly on supporting our kids in their academic experience, to our guidance counselors who are continually working to reach out to students and provide the services they need, for our special ed students who we know are having some real challenges accessing the care and the services that they need. And realizing that there is a lack of access to the resources that are needed to have a successful academic year, whether it's finishing this one strong or starting that one strong. And as a teacher and as a parent, the 2 most important parts of the school year for me is the start of a school year and the wrapping of a school year. They really can really impact the experience the kid will have going forward. So we want September to be great. We want June to be great, because they directly impact each other. So as a city, we need to make sure that we're coming together and making sure that we use every possible opportunity to remove barriers to a quality education and all the pieces that create a quality education. We need to make sure that the disruption our students are feeling can be lessened to the most minuscule detail, and that our kids, especially those that are in most need, our special ed learners, our ELL language learners, kids who require certain special support services, and never mind the academics, then add on those academics. So I'm excited about this hearing. It's unfortunate that we have to have this conversation, but it's one that we need to certainly be a part of. And I look forward to using my experience as a teacher, as a current parent, to really work on this together with everybody. So I appreciate your indulgence, and we'll be removing the docket that's filed a few more down from this, and we'll be sort of combining those questions in that hearing order to Councilor Arroyo's. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councilor Sabi George. The chair recognizes Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just wanted to quickly thank the sponsors. This has been weighing on me 24/7 as we're trying to map out schedules and receive new instructions and manage the calls from other parents in similar situations. So obviously this is a big task for BPS to have to deal with, and a lot of factors outside the district's control, but what we can control, I completely agree that we need to be planning it out transparently and providing as much notice as possible to parents about the different scenarios that may come well into next school year. Thank you. Please add my name.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. The chair recognizes Councilor Campbell. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to quickly thank Councillor Sabi George for continued leadership on the education issues, and Councillor Arroyo as well for introducing the hearing order. Obviously critically important to not only plan for some things now that may not be working well for some of our families, but not all of them. Some are having a great experience. But then most importantly, of course, planning for the future, and not just if we were to come back in person in the fall, but also for, like the hearing order says, possibly the future remote learning experiences, given that that is a possibility, given some of the medical research out there. And I think everything should be on the table. I mean, obviously, in partnership with you, Madam President, we talked about, in the body, the importance of data and looking at data to determine where we're getting it right, where we're getting it wrong, how we serve those who we consider our most vulnerable, or neighborhoods that don't have the highest quality, highest performing schools, what we're doing there and how we do that in a targeted way. So looking forward to this hearing and do hope it allows for families to show up and participate and to offer and co-create solutions in this regard. So thank you to Councillor Sabi George and Councillor Arroyo.
Thank you, Councillor
Please
Campbell.
add my name. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. The chair recognizes Councillor Mejia. Councillor Mejia, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I also wanted just to thank Councillor Sabi George and Arroyo for bringing this. As we continue with this conversation, I just want to really uplift the fact that we have to look at this through an equity lens and having this conversation and making sure that our teachers have the resources and the tools to ensure that our kids don't get left behind. There are a lot of kids right now who are already struggling before COVID-19 and disappearing from our school halls, kids who were chronically absent. And now as we begin this transition, we need to make sure that we're being hyper-focused on making sure that those kids are being well supported during this distance learning situation that everyone seems to be talking about. But I feel like we keep going further ahead. And I want to root this conversation with those who are living the realities and making sure that when we do host this hearing, that we're hearing directly from young people who are sitting at home, parents and educators, so that this conversation is including all of those folks, not just BPS administrators and the city. Just really want to make sure that this is a community-centered conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Mejia. The chair recognizes Councillor Braden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Please add my name to this this hearing order. I bring many concerns. This COVID crisis is going to be on. We're in a surge right now. We don't know if there's going to be future surges. And I really do feel that in terms of our infrastructure to deliver distance learning and that infrastructure going forward is something that.
Councillor Braden, your internet connection, I think, is
unstable.
Can I just try the Councillor Braden? Can you hear us?
Yes. Yes.
Is a little choppy right now. Your internet's choppy.
Okay, just add
wrap up your comment. No, so if you just wrap up.
Fine, just go.
Let's add
my name.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, we're going to go ahead and add names. Could you please add Councillor Braden, Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Wu, Councillor O'Malley, Councillor Bach, and I believe you have Councillor Mejia and Councillor Campbell. Please also add the chair. Docket 0672 will be referred to the Committee on Education, and we will move on to docket 0673. Madam Clerk.
Docket 0673, Councillor Campbell offered the following order for hearing to explore preparation for youth employment opportunities amid and post COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to suspend Rule 12 and add you and Councilor Mejia as original co-sponsors.
Seeing and hearing no objections, we have been added. You have the floor, Councilor Campbell.
Thank you. And I first want to start by thanking both of you for your partnership on this critical issue, as well as Councillor Mejia for some of the recent meetings you've hosted. I know that one of my team members, CJ, participated in one about this very issue of youth summer jobs, and some of our departments made themselves available for that and offered up solutions. So I want to give credit to you as well as to Rashad Cope and Commissioner Morales, who I also hope will participate in this conversation too. We all know this, but 2 weeks ago today, 17-year-old Alyssa King was shot and killed in Dorchester. And just a few days later, 2 young people were shot and injured, a 10-year-old in Roxbury and a 16-year-old in Jamaica Plain. While overall crime is down in the city of Boston, we've actually seen an uptick in homicides and shootings. We have had 11 homicides and 44 shootings as of April 19th, compared to only 9 homicides and 43 shootings as of April 19th last year. In just the time since the stay-at-home order was issued by Governor Baker on March 23rd, the police department, of course, has reported 2 homicides and 15 shootings. During a time which most would think is quiet, in my district, we have seen quite a bit of violence. As a result of COVID-19, we know that schools are closed, programs for young people and programs that young people count on to provide mentorship, jobs have abruptly stopped. We don't know yet what the summer will look like, but it is absolutely critical that we prepare for things to be different. And we also prepare for our young people to have some type of employment opportunities, summer camp, or other programs as well. We need to make sure, of course, that our young people feel safe and supported, and we need to proactively plan to prevent any further uptick in violence. The Youth Summer Jobs Program, like Success Link, make a difference in minimizing crime in Boston, both in the short and long term. An actual Boston Fed report showed that among the 600+ young people they studied who participated in the 6-week jobs program, arraignments for violent crime dropped by 35%, and arraignments for property crime dropped by 57%. The same study found, quote, crime reduction took place over a 17-month period after the program concluded, suggesting that the jobs program doesn't merely prevent idle hands from finding trouble in the moment. Youth employment has a deep impact through community building and providing a point of pride for our young people. Last year, Success Link hired 2,653 15 to 18-year-olds with the help of 170 community-based employment partners. This year, that school year program was canceled. And I know our department is already making adjustments and looking towards the summer to try to figure out what we can do to allow for more employers and organizations to assist our young people in employment opportunities and programming. This hearing is designed to bring together all of us to explore what opportunities might be still available for our young people, what resources employers need to employ young people remotely, and how else we can support them in keeping them on track in this time of instability. And of course, I think Councillor Mejia and Councillor Janey will speak to their own experience as well, but we know how important jobs are for young people. I knew how important it was for me growing up in the city. You could walk into an office at Latin School. I always talk about what an incredible resource PIC was, and get a job almost on the spot. And one such job took me out of my neighborhood at times that were very difficult in the 90s with incidents of violence. It took me down to the financial district to work with an employer who is still a mentor and a dear friend today. So I look forward to this hearing to find more opportunities for our young people to have these opportunities and experiences which we know are extremely valuable and don't just last for that period of employment, but go beyond that into the future and can transform the opportunities available to them. I also know that, obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic and we want to make sure that we do this safely. So there's already some involvement by Northeastern to think about creative ideas as well. But it's important to raise up the violence issue. There are some communities, while they're dealing with the pandemic, while they're dealing with the crisis, unemployment, job loss, loss of loved ones, can't get testing, all of the inequities this council's been talking about for some time, they're also dealing with their fair share of violence, unfortunately. And I think this is, it's our responsibility to raise up these stories for other communities and other residents to also be able to understand that some residents' experience right now is just a little different. And this is one solution at getting at the violence issue in the city of Boston. Thank you again to Councilor Janey, or Madam President, as well as Councilor Mejia for the partnership and your work separately on these critical issues.
Thank you so much, Councilor Campbell. I'll reserve my comments. I am very proud to partner with you and Councilor Mejia. You, Councilor Campbell, along with Councilor O'Malley and myself, we partnered on similar initiatives looking at summer violence. I'm a big, firm believer that the antidote has to be around economic opportunity, making sure that our schools work and making sure that we're addressing trauma. So happy to partner, but in the interest of time, I'll just move through speakers and I'll call on our amazing co-sponsor, Councilor Mejia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Councilor Campbell, for your leadership and inviting our office to participate. So youth employment programs are, for me, I believe, about so much more than just economic empowerment. Number of studies in the past decade have concluded that violent crime rates drop when there are more employment opportunities for young people. So it goes to speak both to the economic empowerment opportunities to create jobs for young people, but it also is a tool to help reduce violence in our streets. With the outbreak of COVID-19, we're at risk of losing or severely reducing the number of opportunities our young people will have to find work in our city. We need this hearing so that we can find new and creative ways to adjust to the new normal we find ourselves in. One thing that I do want to point out, as Councilor Campbell mentioned, last Friday, we hosted a community conversation with young people, service providers, and folks who are really interested in figuring out what we can do to support young people, summer employment and also summer employment. And one of the we discussed the need to let youth voice lead this conversation. And at the end of the day, they know more about what they need. So we should be following their advice and their examples when we have this conversation. I want to thank my sister in service, Councilor Campbell and Council President Janey, for their leadership on this issue. And I look forward to a productive conversation because I too am a PIC recipient. A job literally saved my life during the school summer breaks. I would work at Tom McCann Shoe Store. I worked at Brigham and Women's Hospital, and I worked at McDonald's. I had 3 jobs while I was during the summer, and that helped me stay off the streets. That helped me put food on the table, and it also taught me about work ethic. And so, working opportunities, it's not just about putting money in our kids' pockets. It's really about creating a lifelong love for being earners, being able to earn an income. So I'm really excited to have this hearing. I'm looking at organizations like the Possible Project, Teen Empowerment, and others who are deeply rooted in this conversation so that we can ensure that our kids have a productive summer. So looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. I'm not a PIC kid. I was ABCD. I had ABCD jobs when I was a kid. But anyway, I'm going to continue to call on speakers. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to commend the makers. Please add my name. Obviously, a critical discussion as we move forward. I've had the opportunity to speak to a lot of the youth nonprofits across our city, and I can report that they are very, very concerned, looking to see what the city is going to be doing in terms of what the plan is with respect to our youth for the summer. But a lot of them had to cancel, as we all know, because we get invited. A lot of them had to cancel their spring galas and their spring fundraising events, and many are now canceling their summer ones. And they depend on those very precious resources, those donations, to fund a lot of their programs, particularly to be able to put our youth to work. So critical issue as we're moving into the summer months. Also want to add the role, obviously, that sports plays in our city and keeping our kids busy and off the corners, et cetera. When we canceled school, we canceled all the spring sports. And I've talked to a lot of Little League coaches and a lot of lacrosse coaches who, again, sitting on the sidelines, not sort of knowing what this means for the future of their season and or their training camps, et cetera. In addition to that, I know Council Flynn and I deal with the Rockland Music Pavilion. They put tons of kids to work all across our city every summer. We don't even know if we're going to be able to have concerts down at the pavilion this year. So you think about not just our nonprofits and our regular organizations, but think about a lot of our venues that depend on our summer venues in particular, that depend on a lot of our youth to participate in. Some of them may not even be opened indoor. They might be on a reduced schedule themselves. So critical, important issue. So I look forward to the expedited hearing and commend the makers. And please add my name, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. The chair recognizes Councilor Sabi George. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm really excited about this hearing order as my own children start to reach the age of applying for summer jobs. It is really amazing to know the impact that those jobs have on our kids. I'm not a PIC kid or an ABCD kid, but I was a PIC career counselor when years before I started teaching. So just excited to have, I think ABCD should be at the table. I think the PIC should be at the table because they certainly see firsthand in a slightly different way the work that lies ahead for getting our kids into those really meaningful employment opportunities. So please add my name, excited about this, and look forward to the hearing.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Bach. Councilor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. I just want to commend the makers, and I just want to say, I think it's so important that we invest in this. The reality is that every year we're typically fighting up at the State House for more money for youth jobs, and I think that's going to be even more of an uphill battle this year than ever. And so I just think that the city really needs to step up on this, and we have to remember that jobs for young people, as many of the previous speakers have said, it's not just about that summer, it's the way it can transform your life. And so it's really an investment in human capital. It's just a totally transformative thing. I think people listening at home, that many, many folks can close their eyes and think about an experience they had in a summer or during the school year job in their teenage years that really changed their trajectory. And the problem is these are those years for our young people and they don't get them back. And so I just think we just have to, we can't think small on this. It has to be one of the things that we just we pour resources into. We get super creative about how we're going to provide meaningful, interesting things within the context of the public health limitations. And it just can't be an afterthought. So I just really want to commend the makers and please add my name. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bach. The chair recognizes Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I also wanted to thank and commend the sponsors of this hearing order. It's come up again and again and again. I recently had the pleasure of doing a live stream Q&A with a Boston High School student, Ms. Shelby, who is amazing and inspirational, but the topic of not just worry about fewer summer jobs, but also the types of jobs that would continue to be offered and whether they would be safe for maybe not even so much for the youth, but the family members that they would be coming home to. So the youth very much, young people want to make sure that they are developing skills and earning money to support their families, but also very aware of the public health crisis and their role in protecting their families and keeping seniors and loved ones safe. So I think our role as a city is certainly to fight for more funding, to keep that program and the number of slots there and expand it, but also to really provide that technical assistance to employers to say, how can we rethink how you used to offer summer jobs? It's not going to be, sending young people out to do this or that, or just sit and watch. But as Shelby said, they live, breathe, eat, drink technology, and they can do many of the tasks that are now more important than ever, given this transition to virtual business. So I think the city has a very powerful role, and we can convene that conversation in making sure that we are providing that lifeline and transformational experience for so many of our young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Hopefully your internet connection is a little better.
Fingers crossed. Thank you. Uh-oh, still unstable. I don't know what's going on. Can you hear me?
Hear you better than before. I can hear you better than before, yes.
Okay, thank you. I really applaud the makers for this very important hearing. I hope we can expedite the discussion as soon as possible. So many of our local organizations are in a sort of state of suspended animation, wondering what are we going to do for the summer. And we're at the beginning of May now, so summer's coming very fast. And I hope that we can strategize and discuss with all the stakeholders and come up with a plan that will address many of these concerns. And please add my name. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Braden. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Janey. I thank you. I'd like to commend the makers of this. As many have said, these experiences go beyond just the income, but the income is important. In my family with these jobs, we had a 33% rule. 33% went to the family, 33% went to savings, and 33% was for you. And that 33% that went to the family was vitally important. We really needed that. And for a number of different folks in our communities, that money is food on the table, that money is lights on, that money is rent payments. And so these are things that we really need to focus on and prioritize. And to Councilor Flaherty's point, I was supposed to start coaching Hyde Park Youth Baseball this month, and that's been canceled. And so when we look at ways in which we can productively put teens at work and folks at work that are in our youth communities and figure out ways to really create activities in this current environment for them, that's vitally important too. And so hopefully this conversation leads to trying to figure out different ways to engage our youth over this summer with all these new conditions that we're going to be having due to COVID-19. So I commend the makers. I look forward to this discussion. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Councilor Arroyo. Let's go through and see if folks want to add their name. Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Flynn, Councilor Edwards, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Arroyo. I believe you have the other speakers. Wonderful. And Councilor Wu, if you didn't get her earlier, and Councilor Sarby George. Councilor Campbell,
I just wanted to add, I'm an ABCD kid. My first job, Columbus Ave. So I just had to say, this is great. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Me too. I just want you to know, me too. Don't, you know.
We'll talk about all of our summer jobs as kids after we get through this meeting. Thank you,
Madam President.
Docket 0673 will be referred to the Committee on Strong Women, Families, and Communities. I've been informed by the clerk that docket 0674 has been withdrawn, so we will move on to personnel orders. Madam Clerk, thank you.
Sorry, Madam President.
Okay.
Docket 0675, Councilor Janey for Councilor Flaherty.
Councilor Flaherty seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0675. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and docket 0675 has been passed.
Docket 0676, Councilor Janey for Councilor Mejia.
Councilor Mejia seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0676. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, and docket 0676 has been passed.
And docket number 0677, Councilor Janey for Councilor Wu.
Councilor Wu seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0677. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and docket 0677 has been passed. We'll move on in our agenda.
Federal government is helping states add 6 to 8.
If you could all please mute your devices, that would be great. And we're almost done. I've been informed by the clerk that there are 0 late files. Thank goodness. So we will continue to move on. Is anyone looking to remove an item from the green sheets? Seeing and hearing no hands. Moving on. We're at announcements. Before I open it up to my colleagues, I just want to quickly acknowledge that Charlotte Nelson, many of you know her. She is an activist, a community leader. She celebrates an 80th birthday this week. And so I'm in desperate need of some good news. And so I wanted to recognize her and say happy birthday to Charlotte Nelson. Are there other announcements? And I will recognize colleagues who have their blue hand raised. The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to give a shout out to all the central staff who are working behind the scenes to deliver this performance that we do every week so smoothly. I know it takes a lot of work and coordination, and I want to thank them all for that effort. Two announcements. This week, I'm having a conversation with a grief counselor on a Zoom call. On Thursday evening at 7 p.m. You can find out about it on my Facebook page. And also next week on May 7th, we'll be doing a conversation with our artist community in COVID in conjunction with Councillor Sabi George has been in conversation with our artist community in the past. So I'm hoping that she can join that conversation as well. And that will also be notified on my Facebook page. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Councillor Braden. And I just want to echo your sentiments in terms of lifting up Central staff for all their amazing work. I've had several conversations with many of you, and I'm still going through the list, reaching out to colleagues. We are doing incredible work, obviously, and usually we always are, but especially now given COVID-19. Just a reminder, we are in budget season. And so while we have a lot of budget hearings, because we are also in a pandemic, a lot has been moving through this body. And so there has been a huge workload for Central staff. I'm working with Central staff on creating guidelines that will help move our work more smoothly through our hearings and our meetings. And so be on the lookout for that. There are some suggestions. I'm glad you highlighted your community forum. There are lots of ways that we can move this work forward. I know hearings are very popular. We've been calling for a lot of hearings. I just want to recognize that we are in budget season, and this is a lot for Central staff. So just be mindful. I know these hearing orders are important and we will continue to do the work, but there are other ways that we can do it, like community forums that many of you are having. I'm also bringing back the post-council meeting luncheons. I don't know how I'm going to do the food aspect, but at least we can have some important conversations with experts around a number of issues that don't always require Central staff. So I just wanted to put that out, be on the lookout for these guidelines coming soon, and we will continue to acknowledge councilors who want to make brief announcements. The chair recognizes Councillor Sabi George. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for the opportunity to make a brief statement about about three things: one that's sad, one that's reflective, and one that's celebratory. So I'll start with the sadness. Just this morning, we received word that Karen from my office, Karen Foley's cousin, Bobby Foley, lost his wife, Lois, this morning. She passed away, unfortunately, and due to the COVID-19 virus. We are also in the season of Ramadan, which is an opportunity for Muslims across the world to fast, to pray, and to reflect. And I think that that's something that many of us, whether Muslim or not, have spent a lot of time doing. I have not spent much time fasting, but have spent a lot of time in prayer and reflection during these very difficult days. And I think that it's critical to remember that our Muslim brothers and sisters and the Muslims in my own family are fasting during this time, which it can be really difficult, especially in time of crisis. And then my last comment is a celebration. My triplets, Charlie, Caden, and Sam, turn 14 this weekend, which is hard to believe. I can't believe my kids are only half my age. But anyway, happy birthday to the boys. And they will have, usually Sunday is a video game free day, but I think we'll probably make an exception because it is their birthday and they won't be able to have their usual celebration. But happy birthday to the boys. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Mejia. Councilor Mejia, you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you, Council President Janey, for yet another fan-filled agenda. It's almost 3 and we're still at this. We need to get brief. Okay.
The hearing orders.
I know. Y'all better slow your roll. No more. I'm going to put a mandate. No more of that. But just 2 little updates that I want to share with y'all. On Thursday, we're going to host a mental health wellness check for young people, and Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley will be joining us, as well as Courtney Gray from the Boston Public Health Commission, and some young people and clinicians of color are going to have a dialogue around the importance of mental wellness, checking in with each other. That's this Thursday at 6 o'clock. You guys can join via our Facebook. And then the other one is on, we're doing a labor discussion on May 1st. And Councilor Lydia Edwards will be co-facilitating that alongside me and a few folks who are in the labor world to talk of all things COVID-19 related. So inviting my colleagues to participate in those dialogues. And, you know, we felt very similar to you in terms of creating space for people to continue to be in community and continue to have conversations outside of the norm of the city hall hearings, and that we figured these community conversations lend themselves to create space for people to share what's on their hearts and minds, but also help inform our thinking as we move forward. So looking forward to having you all join us with those. And then we have a hearing order on May 8th with on food insecurity. And you already know that. I shouldn't even be announcing it right now. Okay, bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. The chair recognizes Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This is, sorry, to return to slight business. I missed the green sheets window. So not pulling this from the green sheets, but just a note that I plan to pull from the green sheets next week. There are many dockets in the Planning, Development, and Transportation Committee that are nominations, appointments for certain commissions, and there are 3 in particular that I want to start moving through: the Aberdeen Architectural Conservation District, the St. Botolph Architectural Conservation District, and the South End Landmarks District Commission. So rather than have hearing, we actually had scheduled a hearing and it was canceled in the beginning of the COVID stay-at-home advisory. But rather than doing that, we've requested resumes and statements from all of the appointees. So please watch out in your inboxes. I'm going to forward that hopefully by the end of this week. Thank you, Neil Doherty, for coordinating. And then if you all could review, and if there are any flags, please let me know, or we can raise it at the next week's council meeting. But I hope to intend to pull these from the green sheets for a vote next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. The chair recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm excited to announce the CPA hearing will be next Tuesday, May the 5th at 5 p.m. So I know a lot of folks realize this, but it was originally scheduled in first week in March. And then Director Poff's dad took ill and has subsequently passed away. So our thoughts and prayers are with Christine Poff. And then sadly, she was involved in a terrible car accident and was injured. And then of course, the closings with the our COVID-19 response. So we have an opportunity this Tuesday at 5 p.m. We're going to discuss the appropriations for $24 million in CPA fund revenues for projects across the city that have been recommended by the Community Preservation Committee to the council for our approval. We'll also be looking at some of the administrative and operating expenses of the CPC, as well as future appropriation deadlines. So please tune in. I'll try to find a way to streamline them to the best of my ability. So I know that particularly our district colleagues are stretched on other calls and Zooms and what have you to try to identify sort of the best time when we'll be dealing with projects in your respective districts. But nonetheless, looking forward to that hearing. And then finally, on a good news note, Councilor Asabi George reminded me, my son Michael, his birthday will be on Sunday as well, and he'll be 22. I know Clerk Feeney remembers when he was born. So happy birthday to my Michael.
Only half your age too, right?
That's right. That's right. So he'll be 22 on Sunday. So the Flahertys will be having a birthday cake. And I'm sorry to both my colleagues, Councilor Mejia and Councilor Arroyo. I had no other date to choose from May 5th. I did not want to have the hearing on Cinco de Mayo. However, I know that there'll be no big bashes going on because of the social distancing. So that was where we decided to slot it. But under normal circumstances, I would have been probably with both of you somewhere out in the community for Cinco de Mayo. So that said, thank you, and look forward to folks tuning in on Tuesday.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. The chair recognizes Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. 2 very quick things. One, just to remind folks, this Saturday, in keeping with our discussion, I will be about workers' rights. I'll be having a working during COVID virtual coffee hour from 10 to 12 p.m. That'll be on Facebook Live. I had a very successful coffee hour on housing during COVID, where we went through all the different rights. We have attorneys there answering people's frequently asked questions. We'll be having a whole segment dedicated to, honestly, unemployment, accessing rights, how to advocate for yourself, how to go to the appeal process. That is, I think, some of the hardest things for people to feel even energized to deal with. But we want to be able to walk people as through as many things and give them the free resources, the free forms. There's so many things out there, and we're just going to have that up. So, and that will be simultaneously translated. So people will be able to call in and hear it in Spanish and be able to also ask questions in Spanish, which will be translated on a Zoom. So I'm very excited about that. I also want to say she's coming back. I had mentioned that we are all praying for Nina Coletta. And so Nina is coming back, and 16 days without her children being able to talk to her is a lot for anybody. But now I'll never ever ask her to stop talking again. I'm so excited. And so keep her in her prayers. We are cautiously optimistic. It's been a journey for our office. She's a family member. And you know how all of you are with your own chiefs of staffs and staff members. When they hurt, you hurt too. So thank you for all your positive energy, and thank you.
Good news. Thank you for that. And thank you for that important update on Nina. I know many of us were praying for her. For any colleagues who are looking to make announcements at this time or raise your blue hand at any time in a hearing or in a council meeting, there is a bar at the bottom of your screen that says Manage Participants. And then when you click that, a sidebar comes and you can kind of raise your hand. The chair recognizes Councilor Flynn. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I just want to inform the body, I participated in a great discussion last night with a group from New York. It was the Asian Task Force in New York City, and it was on Zoom. It was going well. We were talking about anti-discrimination and hate crimes as well. And what I wanted to inform you was during the conversation, as we're looking at each other, you can see 8-10 people on the screen. Someone was able to access Zoom from the outside and just used a lot of hateful and negative and racist comments. And it really had a huge impact on the discussion on the people that were talking about ways to prevent discrimination. But I saw the faces of all these participants during this call, and even one person's hate comments really has an impact on so many people. I didn't realize it until I really saw it up close from my own point of view. But I just wanted to highlight, even as we talk about anti-violence, anti-discrimination, and hate, a lot of hate talk, it still exists today, whether it's in our state or in other or across the country. So we just have to be vigilant about people's human rights and civil rights as well. So thank you, Madam President, for giving me the opportunity to pass that story along.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flynn. The chair recognizes Councilor O'Malley. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Just wanted to again really commend all of us who've been using sort of new technology as a way to connect with our constituents, with each other. Like many of you have done, I've been having some really impactful and important chats and webinars, and I just wanted to highlight one. The other day, I had a webinar with Tom Boyke, who's an epidemiologist and director of Global Health Initiative, the Council on Foreign Relations, down in Washington, D.C. It was about a 45-minute discussion, and it was equal parts hopeful in the real desire that other countries across the globe are working collaboratively to fund and to discover a vaccine for COVID-19. But it was also very, very sobering and somber when we look at how late we as a country were to taking some really important steps and what opening up the country is going to look like. So I encourage you all to take a look at it. It's on my YouTube page. It's also released as one of my podcasts, The O-Pod, which you can get on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. But wanted to thank Professor Boyke for his incredible work and spending some time with the people of Boston through Zoom. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else looking to make an announcement? Okay. We will then close out our meeting with memorials as we always do. And today we will adjourn our meeting in memory of the following individuals: for Councilor Baker, Patricia O'Neill and Sally Ann McNeely; for Councilor Bach, Julie Thompson and Jane Kaplan; for Councilors Flaherty, Baker, and Asabi George, Patricia O'Neill again; for Councilor Flynn, Wong, and German